This is NHTV2, North Haven Government Television, a service of North Haven Community Television. The following program is brought to you through the support of the town of North Haven.
Mike, the floor is yours.
All right, thank you, everyone. My name is Mike Frieda, North Haven's first selectman, and by town charter, I'm here tonight on official town business. For those that don't know, every 2 years, North Haven's first selectman has to go around all the boards and commission meetings to reorganize the boards in terms of chairperson, vice chair, and secretary. So I've got about 4 more meetings to do, and then we conclude that process to comply with the town charter. So tonight I have 3 orders of business. And the first order of business is to ask this Wetlands Commission for a nomination for the chairperson of this commission. Do I have a nomination?
I will nominate Frank Bumstead.
We have a nomination for Mr. Bumstead. Is there a second?
I'll second.
We have a second. Are there any other nominations or any other discussions? All right, hearing none, we'll call for that vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Thank you, Mr. Bumstead, for your willingness to serve as chairperson. Second order of business, ladies and gentlemen, is to ask for a nomination for vice chair. Is there a nomination?
I nominate Steve Miller.
We have a nomination for Mr. Miller. Is there a second?
I'll second.
We have a second. Are there any other nominations or any other discussions? Hearing none, we'll call for that vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you very much, Mr. Miller. Last order of business for me is to ask for a nomination for secretary of this Inland Wetlands Commission. Can I have a nomination?
I'd like to nominate John Wickham.
We have a nomination for Mr. Wickham. Is there a second?
I'll second.
We have a second. Are there any other nominations or any other discussions? Hearing none, we'll call for that vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you, Mr. Wickham. So thank you very much for all of you who served. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm sure you're aware that the Inland Wetlands Commission plays a very important part in this government, as does planning and zoning and all the other members who sit on our elected boards and our appointed boards. So thank you, Mr. Bumstead. The floor is yours. Have a good evening. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mike. Good evening and welcome to the North Haven Inland Wetlands. This is our regular meeting. Our mission is the preservation and protection of the wetlands and water courses of the town of North Haven, balanced with responsible economic development. And at this time, I'd like to introduce everyone, and we're going to start way over there on my right. Andy, start us off.
Andy Bevilacqua, Town Engineer.
Alan Frederickson, Land Use Administrator.
Laura Mongarasi, Zoning and Wetlands Enforcement Officer.
John Whitcomb, Commissioner. Joe Kennedy, Secretary.
Steve Miller, Vice Chair. Frank Bumstead.
Cheryl Junewood, Commissioner.
Anna Garston, Commissioner.
Kathleen Fox, Alternate Commissioner.
Leslie Carney, Land Use Secretary.
Genevieve Bertolini, stenographer.
Okay, at this point in time, I'm going to look at Alan. Alan, any changes to the agenda? Any additions? Any subtractions?
We do have an addition to the agenda. We have received a petition from Nancy Alderman to be an intervener, to be recognized, to be granted intervener status. And the commission received a copy of that petition, and according to Town Council Jeff D'Onofrio's directive, the commission should act on that petition. And if I can quote from Attorney D'Onofrio's email, based on my review of the petition and my application of applicable law to the contents of the petition should be granted.
Okay. And on that, I'd like a motion to go into deliberations for the purpose of this.
So moved.
Okay. Got a motion. Can I get a second?
Second.
Okay, can we take a quick vote? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Okay. Guys, what do you think? Shall we grant it?
I think yes.
Of course.
Okay, can I get a motion to approve the grant?
I'll do the motion.
And can I get a second?
I'll second.
Okay, can I get a vote? All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, it's unanimous?
Frank, that was Ann who made the motion?
Yes.
Thank you.
Ian made the motion, Joe seconded. Okay, now we're back into the meeting. The only thing I'm going to ask is, Miss Nancy Alderman, if you're here, could you stand up so we are and say hi to you? Hi, how are you?
Fine.
Okay,
Okay, good. Are you good too?
we're good, we're good. Nancy, what we're going to do is we're going to let the applicant go through his process, and our commissioners will ask questions. And then once that's done, before we go to public comment, I'll ask you to please come up and if you have anything to state. If you have anything to ask the applicant, the same as the people in the audience, make it go through me. I mean, the applicant's going to hear it, but you ask me the question, and then the applicant then can answer the questions. This way here, we don't get a he said, she said banter situation going on. We just kind of try to keep it
Sounds good.
relaxed
Thank
and organized. And guys, one more thing, it's being taped, and Ms. Bertolini is also taping it, and the acoustics in this room are notoriously horrible. So please be quiet, but when you do speak, speak loudly, precise, and I think everybody's going to come up to that microphone. And when you do come up, or that one? So then that's North Haven? Okay, so then, how do you want to handle that? Do you want to come up over here and take the
Yeah,
microphone
they
and hold
could
it?
just hold it.
Okay, that's what we'll do.
Will that work?
Oh, I'm sure it'll help. It'll help.
Jen, is that your mic?
No,
No, that's an NHTV mic.
Okay,
but I could bring this mic over there if they want to come over there. Right?
Okay, that'd be good.
okay, so when you do come up, please state your name, address, and then hold the mic and speak into it. But that's down the road. Billy, what are you going to use for a mic? We'll get to it. Ms. Bertolini, what do you want Billy to do for a microphone? No, do you want him to? The people aren't going to be asking questions until Billy's done, so you want Billy to hold the mic?
Yeah, he can hold it when he's
I
there.
got to hold it.
He can take this one.
Bill, why don't you come over here and take this mic and
Yeah, I mean, we're not there yet, but
bring it back where you need to be?
that's fine.
Okay? I'm sorry, never use that in public when the time comes.
Okay, so I went over the acoustic stink in the room. Everybody gets up, says their name, addresses, and addresses it back to me. And then at the end, the applicant will, I'm sure, answer your questions. So then once the applicant has his procedure go through, we'll have deliberations at the end. And I'm going to have Joe read it back in, even though it's from last month.
Now, I have a question. My understanding was we just voted for...
Yes, and Mr. Whitcomb has a problem with his eye tonight, and he's asked Joe for this
So
evening.
Joe will be acting secretary.
Joe will be acting secretary
One
for
last-
tonight.
one last.
Poor Mr. Whitcomb has a little problem with his eye, and we're gonna let it go for tonight. Joe, just read it in best you can.
Item 1, I-23-11, continuation of the application of AB EPCO Park LLC, applicant Sullivan Corp., owner relative to 250 Universal Drive, map 1, lot 1, seeking a permit to conduct regulated activity and a site plan referral. Plan entitled Inland Wetlands Permit Application, 250 Universal Drive, Town of North Haven, Connecticut, prepared by Langdon, Connecticut, Inc., dated 10/26/2023, scale 1 inch equals 40 feet, IG 80 zoning district.
Hang on 1 minute. Ms. Bertolini, what do you need?
I don't know, is that my mic up there? Did you put it down? I don't know what it was picking up, but it
It
wasn't.
doesn't augment voice, okay? It records. So, again, to urge you all, if everyone can be as still or quiet as they can be, bear with our brick walls and hard floor. And if everyone could speak up when they speak, that would be helpful, thank you.
Is that working?
I can hear it, but something's
Something's happening. Okay, so you don't need Joe to read it in again?
No.
Okay. Okay, so is there someone here to do this?
Yes.
Go ahead, Billy. Sorry about the voice thing.
It's okay.
Okay.
I'll try and talk loudly. If you can't hear me, please let me know. My name is Bill Gambardella. I'm the applicant, AB Eco Park. At least one half of the applicant, the other half of the applicant is Andy Anastasia. We are presented this last month, and we've updated quite a bit from last month to try to address the comments of the staff and the commission. There are maps here, of which I would have to put up front here, but these are just updates to the previous map. We just changed out the pages that are new. There were some comments that there wasn't enough detail in the maps. This has a significant amount of detail, which I'll leave it to the engineers to address. But
Just for reference, Bill, how many sheets have been revised?
is it 10?
About that.
Okay, thank you.
And do you have them in slide?
I actually do.
Well,
I have
what
the
I'm
entire
thinking
map.
is, yeah, they can see it, but our guys can't.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. But those are the hard copies anyway. If you want me to put it up on the screen, I can. I do have it. I do have the map. The whole 45 pages or whatever it is. But I just wanted to address some of the concerns of the commission, and also to address some of the things that have come up since the last meeting that I've heard either from the commission members or from the public regarding the remediation that we're proposing at the site. Why do we need to remediate? And that's a big question everybody's coming up with. Why do we have to bring in so much soil? Why do we have to do all these things? And I just want to go back to the history I tried to give a little bit of last time, of all the dumps that were filled in all along that way. The old dump behind the bar on Sackle Point Road, which was filled in. The North Haven dump, which was capped. You need to be capped landfills, don't take them out. The Bizzuto's trucking depot, which used to be Stop and Shop off Exit 9, that was all dug out. There was all kinds of creosote in there. The rest of it was left and capped by a building. All the way down Universal Drive, we have capped and sealed and put buildings over contaminated soil. We've done it over and over again. There was a question about, well, why can't we just dig out everything that's there? This particular piece of land is about 70% landfill. It is a dump. If you dig into this soil anywhere on this property, you're going to hit garbage. You're going to hit tires. You're going to hit barrels. You're going to hit household waste. You're going to hit all kinds of things. We have been testing it for 2 years to find out what needs to be removed, what's in the soil, what's there. We know we've characterized the entire site at this point. We have a very good idea of what's there. We also understand that once we start to dig, we're going to find other things that we're going to have to deal with. This is not a clean site. If you drive through this and look at the wetlands are full of tires, they're full of barrels, they're full of railroad ties, they're all that kinds of strange colors. They're not clean. They're not pristine wetlands by any means. And I also have to point out the fact that this is not a quiet, pristine wildlife sanctuary. It sits next to a 100-acre active freight yard that has people coming and going, trucks, tractor trailers coming and going every day, railroad cars being filled and shipped every day, has a metal shredder that shreds cars 100 yards away from it. It's not a quiet, pristine area by any means. So I just want to point that out to the commission and about why we need it. And I'm going to go back, somebody reminded me of something that I think is a good example of why we remediate. I was going to use the tire pond that we just covered with fill from different locations, including fill that came from the New Haven Harbor when we built the Pearl Harbor Memorial Bridge that's on top of that tire pond right now, that I believe the commission should have approved, I believe you did. All that's been done in the recent past. But long ago is a good example of why we remediate with Upjohn. Long ago, a woman named Anita Cotillia asked me to go in a canoe ride on the Quinnipiac River. Long ago, that woman with her husband, another guy named Willis Mackey, who many of you remember, took that canoe ride, and while we were trying to figure out where the smell from up there was coming from, found an outflow pipe that was pouring some kind of effluent into the water that was turning solid on the bottom. And the only reason we noticed it because it was pretty, and it turned solid as soon as it hit the water. And Rico took out his screwdriver, pried it off the bottom, put it into a couple of glass jars, and I brought it to an EPA meeting at the high school and said, "What's this?" Next thing you know, Upjohn's shutting down. So it needed to be remediated because it was toxic. It's there, it falls in the rules that we say it can't stay there. Even though it wasn't going anywhere, it was stuck there in the bottom of the river. But it still leaches into the water. 250 Universal Drive has PCBs, has a significant amount of PCBs, which I'll show you. But under TSCA, the Toxic, the Toxic Substances Control Act, I have to remember what these things stand for. There's lots of acronyms in federal law. The Toxic Substances Control Act says if there's PCBs on the property that exceed a certain level, it has to be dug out, removed, and sent to a toxic waste landfill. We have probably several acres of PCBs that need to be dug out 4 to 8 feet deep, including in Wetland 17, which we'll show you in a minute. We're not asking for that tonight because we're not there yet. What we're asking for tonight is to fill in a 2,500, not even a 2,500 square foot wetland, so that we can level the property and make it developable. Now, there was comments made about why we have to bring in that much fill. If you look at the property, there are over and over, you'll see hills that are 10 feet high, and go up 10 feet, go up 10 feet, and go down 10 feet, because it was a hump yard. And all those humps are filled with garbage, for the most part. So if we can't just move those humps, because then we have to get permission from DEP to disturb a landfill, which they won't give us. They want us to cap it. So we're kind of stuck here. In order to remediate this property, we have to bring in fill, not only to level between the humps, but to level from one side of the yard to the other side of the yard, so that we can build a level platform. And we're not going up as high as we could. What we're doing is, at the far end down near Target, we're actually going to bring it down several feet, so that we don't have to bring it up as high as the rest of the way. So
What are you going to do with that fill, Bill?
that fill's going to be pushed back into the other yard, into the rest of the yard.
Where's the fill you're taking to New Haven?
The fill we're taking in New Haven is actually coming, the plan right now is to take the fill from the northernmost part and put it in New Haven.
So you are taking that northern fill and bringing it to New Haven?
Right, which is the cleanest fill on the property.
Yeah, about 24 inches down, it's virgin.
Yes. There's not much contamination there at all.
And that's very sandy soil up there.
Yes. So we're going to bring that down about, I think it's about 4 feet, somewhere around there. And then, so that way we don't have to bring up the rest as high. We're trying to keep it all about 20 feet above sea level, which will only be to the north of the pond. South of the pond, it will drop back down again, and that will stay somewhere around, I think.
When you call the pond, you're talking 17?
No, the pond is the big wetland body, which I'll show you. It's a big,
So you're
big
talking
pond.
4?
I think that's right. It's the biggest wetland on the property, which we're probably gonna have to expand. But again, that's a future conversation. I don't want to get there yet, but we're not sure about a lot of these things, but we still have to get DEP and EPA to approve what we're going to be doing in terms of our remediation and also mitigation of the wetlands.
So let me, before you go any further, let me just get this right. You're not, me, talk louder? You got it. They don't know who they're dealing with. So let me get this right. So tonight, you're not here for remediation on 17? Because your original application was for remediation on 17. So is this a new application?
No.
Alan? Yes? No?
I'm trying to hear him out and see what he's saying.
You saw where?
The application that I would perceive to be before the commission is represented by these drawings, I guess, as modified by these drawings.
We haven't
That I
seen
have
these
not-
drawings yet.
Right, yes.
Okay.
And I'll
So
leave
if-
that, I'm going to sort of leave that to the engineer. Why is this not moving?
I'm too close to the technology, because I'm toxic to technology, trust me. I can't even get my phone to work right.
Daughter Molly, very technologically savvy.
Sometimes. We'll see.
Take your time now.
Thank you.
So you are here for remediation on 17, along with, yes, no? We'll get there. We'll
I
get
think we're
there.
gonna have to have that conversation.
Okay, all right, we'll get there.
And I think there's a reason why. and I-
Some of these guys gotta go to work tomorrow.
Yes.
Just try to remember that. Okay, all right.
17, we were gonna try to remediate or mitigate a portion of 17 as an exchange for filling in the 2,200 or 2,100 feet of wetlands. After our discussion at the last meeting, we went back and looked at that and realized, we're gonna have to come back to you for 17 no matter what because of the PCBs. That it might be better to mitigate another wetland, but we're never gonna touch again, and I think,
All right, we're
just,
gonna hear you out, Bill.
let me just show you, okay, now it's working, right? Let me just get to this map, and I'll show you why what we're talking about. All right, so this is pretty much the map we were talking about last time, except it's a little easier to see now. Except once I stand in front of it. All this here, this is area 17 right there, okay? This is the MBT plant and the anaerobic digesters. So everything you see in a little bit of red is PCBs that need to be dug out. There's also another area over here. All this has to come out.
Billy, did you get the test results from your studies? That's a
Yes,
simple yes or no. You
we did.
Okay.
We did. And they're putting together the final reports now for DEP and EPA for that matter. Because this is an EPA regulated area. All this is cost regulated by EPA. We have to go to that. So at some point, we're going to have to dig out all this soil, about 8 feet deep in the middle of the wetland. We're not ready to go there yet because we don't have permission from EPA yet. And we can't come back to you and ask you to do that until EPA says we have to do it. So our belief is that they're going to tell us to dig all this out.
Hey, Billy, no kidding around. We need a roadmap.
That's what I'm trying to give you now.
Yeah, but we need it on paper. And I'm gonna ask you to please make it as simple as you can for us, because all the acronyms in the world, when I went through all of this, I actually had another sheet next to me with all the acronyms, because you get into a simple paragraph and there's 8 different acronyms in a paragraph.
Welcome to environmental law.
Yeah, oh yeah.
This is,
So Billy,
this
can
is the
you,
wetland right here we're talking about.
but can you get us a roadmap of where you are, what you, obviously, I know what permit you're asking us for,
Correct.
but can you then say what your next permit, your next permit, your next permit, your next permit, and then where each one of these permits goes, can you make like a V off and say, if this permit is accepted by this person? Just so we get an idea.
I'll tell you exactly what's gonna happen. It's gonna be.
Because when you
this
say
way
it's controlled by EPA, don't take this the wrong way.
I get it.
None of us care.
I know.
You ain't getting out of us.
No, we gotta come back to you.
Yeah,
It's okay.
you won't get there if you don't get through us.
We have to go to them and then come back to you. We get their approval, and we come back to you for your approval. Because we have to, that way we know what we're asking for. We don't have to go back to
Really,
the place.
to me, and I'm only one person,
Yeah.
that sounds like one of my kids asking for a blank check. Just write your name on the bottom. We'll take care of the rest. I'm not saying we won't write a check, but I'm saying, boy, we got to know what it's for, where it's going, and everything else. And I think the commission is going to feel the same way as I do about a blank check. It's going to be to you as well.
I understand.
So work with us.
I would just reiterate having it in writing versus you telling us in this.
Well, we can put it in, we can put a little roadmap together for you. That's gonna be simple, but there's gonna be one more application as far as I understand it, after this one. The last application you're gonna see is the entire project, all at once. This application is just so we can bring in the fill. That's all it's for. We can't do anything else until we have everything ready.
I think we want to see,
Oh,
but we want to see the roadmap for everything before any decisions are made. So that's what I think. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, oh, yeah.
It
That's
doesn't
what,
matter if this is what's happening right now. Like, we just want to have the big picture so we can take it all into account and make decisions for smaller decisions.
because we're not all road scholars. We don't know that you have to go to EPA first. And then don't take this the wrong way, but we're gonna check it out.
no, I understand. I've been at this for 6 years, and again, I know,
I've been at this
I know
for
too much.
25, so I'm cautious. I mean, you gotta understand it. You know, we're very lenient with you because I grew up with you, and everybody on this board knows you. So, I mean, we're very friendly, but you gotta understand, we gotta do our due diligence. The people of this town,
I'm fine with it.
you know,
I live here. I'm not going anywhere. My partner lives here. He's not going anywhere. My daughter lives here. My nephew lives here. My brother,
Okay.
my sister, they all live in North Haven. We're not going anywhere. So I don't want to build a toxic waste dump in North Haven. I want to build something that we're gonna be proud of. That's gonna be a facility that's the first of its kind and is a model for the rest of the world. That's what we're trying to do here.
Carry on.
Thank you. This, so I think I pointed out where the PCBs are. As we dig, the reason why I say we're not sure how much we have to dig out yet is as we dig, if we find more PCBs, we have to kick them out. We can't leave. So that area, especially over here, that may go up.
I'm not picking on you, Billy, but you just said you did a whole mess of testing. Your test results will show the PCBs there or not, correct?
As far as we know, there aren't, but when you start digging, there's a lot of tires there.
Well, I looked at the 1982 aerial photography, and there was a huge pond there. Right?
At one point.
We don't have those with us, do we?
No, there's no question, that was all filled in.
Yeah.
That was all filled in, no question. That's what the tires are. The railroad brought in garbage and filled in the pond. But that's the big pond I was talking about right there.
Yeah, that's what we
Yeah. Yeah. That's gonna stay, that'll be cleaned out, it'll probably be enlarged to mitigate, but that's about as much as I wanna say about it. I'm gonna leave it to the engineers to give you a better explanation than I can, but that's the project. This is a welcome center, greenhouse, aquaponics center. This is a glass recycling facility, this is a municipal recycling facility. MBT is where all the garbage goes in, it's sorted, all the recyclables come out. Organics go through the anaerobic digesters, it turns into methane over here, that gets captured, turned into renewable natural gas, gets put in the pipeline over here. Liquid CO2 comes out over here, that gets pumped into breweries, industry, medical use, and then back here is the power plant where about 20% of what comes in will end up in here as fuel.
Billy, when did they allow digesters? I thought all trash had to be burned.
You don't have to burn it, that's what we do. We do that, and we do that on a regular basis in this country, but in most of the world, they do it in most of the world, I shouldn't say they don't, but in Europe, in Asia, there's a lot more separation.
Okay.
And if you go over, I was in Germany and Austria, and if you go over there, you'll find anaerobic digesters by themselves, because people bring organics to the digester. They have MBT plants by themselves, because people sort of separate and they bring their trash to the MBT. And they have glass plants by themselves, because people separate the glass. And the glass plant basically takes all the glass that now goes into recycling, goes to landfill, for the most part. A lot of it, some of it gets used as road bed.
If you're going to take the glass and crush it up, do you have an end user?
Yes. The glass is not going to be crushed up. What we're going to do with it, we're going to make it into smaller chunks, yes, but it's going to be sorted by color. And once you sort it by color, you can sell it directly to the glass manufacturers, and they use that instead of virgin color, because it's clean. It's clean and sorted by color, so they can just melt it back down. So we'll produce about 600 tons a day of recycled glass.
And you think it's profitable?
Very. Very.
Because, when I was a volunteer fireman in town here, we used to collect the newspapers. There were paper drives.
Yeah.
And we did it in the 70s, and then we got into the 80s, and Hirschman's in New Haven didn't even want the paper for recycling.
Cardboard right now is $1 a ton.
Yeah,
Yeah. But the cardboard is not where the money is, and if we have to give the cardboard away, it doesn't matter. We make money elsewhere, and the cardboard can still be recycled. We put it in a freight car, ship it out, along with the glass, along with everything else, except for the metal. We'll probably sell that to Sims or somebody nearby. They'll recycle it, and they'll do what they do with it.
I still am dumbfounded because even the price of metal fluctuates so much, it's under $200 a ton now.
The majority of this...
It wasn't long ago, they were sitting outside of China in boats. China didn't want the stuff.
Absolutely.
I don't want to interrupt the discussion of the big picture, and this is a good drawing and such, but I'm still groping to get back to what the request is at this time. I reviewed the drawings before last meeting, and I thought I had a pretty good handle on what was being proposed. Your opening remarks seem to indicate that was being revised. I don't know if you could kind of clarify, or again, if you're going to leave it to the engineers to...
I think I'd rather let the engineers explain that. That much. I think if you want to go directly to that, or we could just talk about what beneficial use material is. I think there was a big issue about this being toxic waste. And beneficial use material, which I gave the commission a summary of what beneficial use material is and what's allowed by statute and regulation, which we've had a discussion about. And happy to make that part of the conditions of the use of bringing in the fill, that we have to comply with that.
You want to go over the bud now?
Well, not the bud, just what the material is, not in specifics, but just the fact that it's not toxic material, that it's a regulated process.
Well, how do you call street sweeping not toxic?
You
It's got
can't-
asbestos, heavy metals, car parts,
I think-
antifreeze?
I think I'll
fuel?
let Tim take that one. Yeah, go ahead. Do the next slide. I'll go into it.
Boy, you're in trouble.
My name is Tim Ijak. I work with EKI Environment and Water. I'm a licensed environmental professional by the state of Connecticut. I've been involved with this project, as I said in the last meeting, since around 2016. I've been involved with doing the borings and test pitting and collecting the samples for the characterization of what's out there, and also for the future planning of what a remedial action plan in conjunction with the site development plan will look like. So Dave and Dean are going to talk specifically today about wetland 16, correct? And I understand there's questions about the roadmap, and there's the questions about the purpose of why we're here today, and I'll let them provide that. But I will do my best to help with the application as well as the roadmap. So the application is to bring in fill and also impact some wetlands, wetland 16 as part of that. Now, the type of fill that we're looking to bring in as defined by the state of Connecticut is for beneficial use.
Well, I'm going to stop you right there. If this is about 16, tell me how many yards of fill do you need to fill 16? Just 16. Because I'm getting a drift. I'm going to use the word drift. That this is about wetland 16 tonight. So if it's about wetland 16 tonight, and you want to talk about wetland 16, and you want to talk about your bud, how many yards you bringing in to fill 16, and what's in it to fill 16? You understand? Because again, we're not being mean here, but again, there is no way I think these guys are going to do a blank check. I don't think that's going to happen. So if you're talking about 16, carry on.
Correct me if I'm wrong, the application is for the filling of the site, which includes the filling of wetland area 16.
So the contours that you offered up originally have been modified slightly, but not enormously. Is that correct?
I think so. Yeah, we'll get into that next.
Fair enough.
I'm giving it to you. All right. Dave, do you want to take it?
So the answer is no, I'm wrong.
Yeah.
We haven't modified the contours, but I'll explain.
Good evening, folks. Dean Gustafson, Senior Wetland Scientist with the Wetland Scientist Development Technology. I'll just quickly recap. And the reason why we're here tonight is for bringing in fill material under the bud permit from D across the country. So that includes regulated activities, including filling in wetland 16, as well as some activities within the 50-foot upland review area that this commission reviews. These are the wetlands that have been delineated across the site, across these two slides, so that provides you a recognition of where those resources are. The dashed green lines surrounding those green delineated features represents the 50-foot upland review area. So those are the existing conditions of the project.
Time out. Alan, I don't want to do anything wrong. This is the first time in 24 plus years that I've seen this kind of happen. So I'm asking, is it legal that they come in and have a change of a plan if they're leaving out the remediation, which they had the first time? If you say yes,
Yes.
it is.
Yes, but I'd like to hear out the entire proposal. If they're going to modify the proposal, it's modified as as indicated. So, and the commission is here to judge whether they would approve that or not. So, yes, I'd like to hear what it is. I was thinking that Bill was headed in a different direction, but I don't think so. I think that the contours are basically where they were, and I think the amount of the fill is the same. And if the fill is still, as Dean is indicating, going into wetland 16, and if what Bill is advocating is to say that wetland 17 is something where they're going to do mitigation, but it's not determined yet, then we'll have to deal with that. We'll have to deal somehow with that fact that that's out there and that's inspecific at this time. So maybe that's something that's fallible, maybe something that's not.
Yeah, if I could, wetland 16 is all we really want to deal with today. Wetland 17 will just say, we're coming back to you with that. We're not going to mitigate wetland 17 until we know what has to be done. That'll be a future application of that. That next application will include wetland 17 and all the other wetlands, all the mitigation, everything we're going to be doing throughout the site. This application today is just wetland 16, so we can fill it in and bring in the fill. That's all we're talking about. That along with, showing you the contours and everything else that's going on.
So then,
The request is still to fill 600,000 cubic yards of material.
To bring in that much and to fill a 2,100 square foot wetland. That's the request.
I got a chuckle on that one. I'm sorry. You got me.
That's the request.
Because, I mean, I'm just, Billy, I'm dumbfounded. I want you to continue with your program, I do. But I got to tell you, it's mind-boggling. You're not going to put the fill on top of 17?
No.
So you're going to have 600,000 yards, and then you're going to have a crater around 17, because later on you're going to go in there and excavate, and you feel pretty comfortable that you might have to excavate more than what you originally thought. So, I mean, it's mind-boggling. I want you to carry on, I do, but the only good thing out of this, in my own personal mind, and I'm not talking for them, and I'm going to let them talk for themselves. The only good thing about this was you were cleaning up that railroad yard of mercury, heavy metals, PCBs, and everything else that you find underneath there, which, by the way, when we start thinking about the railroad in the 50s, 60s, what was being transported by the railroad? Nuclear stuff. So,
We haven't found that.
one of my questions to you is, did you test for it? So, I don't know what you're getting into, but what I saw good out of this, I didn't see his eco park, because I'm not positive that that's not for our grandkids to see. I mean, he's talking about filling for 2 to 3 years before you can do anything. And Billy, when we get to that filling, I got pages of questioning, but I'm just taking a moment here trying to grasp the fact that we're now talking about 600,000 yards of fill and just filling in a wetland.
It seems that that's the case. I guess I would go and hear it out. I think it can probably be concise, and let's hear what it is.
That is the application.
Yeah, that's always been the application since day one, is bringing in the fill material. The environmental cleanup that we indicated last month at our hearing, that there's still details that need to be worked out with other agencies before we know exactly what will be allowed and what's being required.
I thought no activities could take place on this property until there was an EPA cleanup. Again, if I'm wrong, I'm a big boy, tell me. Go ahead, sir. Say your name.
Sorry, Tim Myjack, Lee County. So the application was always for area 16 and the filling of the site. You use the description, the roadmap. during the last meeting, we got into the roadmap, which I think somewhat blurred the application. It blurred it because we said, okay, you're asking questions, we're giving you honest answers. So the questions about, for example, Wetland 17 were part of the roadmap that we're still working on, but never part of the application. So that's where I think some of the lines got blurred
Don't
from
we
the
have
application
part
to
of an
the...
application for mitigation?
We do.
We do.
Yeah.
So what we've,
Okay.
and if I can just kind of explain, so what we did, and we heard your questions and your comments the last meeting, and also comments from staff. And so as part of that, we did make some revisions, because one of the things that we realized was that for the wetland mitigation plan that we originally proposed for wetland 17 was being complicated by the need for the PCB cleanup in that area. And we understood, the challenges from a commission standpoint of trying to grasp those two aspects and those two topics together and how they interrelate, because you can't do the mitigation first, restore the wetland area. It needs to be cleaned up first, but we're not at that point yet. So what we've done is revise the mitigation plan to focus in on wetlands 5, 6, and 7, which is a larger combined wetland area, as well as the surrounding upland review area of those wetlands, and applying essentially a similar enhancement plan that we had originally proposed from 17. So we can get away from the need for 17 to be remediated from an environmental cleanup standpoint.
So which ones you're going to know? 5, 6, and 7?
5, 6, and 7.
Okay, and we have maps on that? Because when I went into your...
Yes, it's part of the
Eco Park
revised
development.
plan sheets that were submitted.
Okay,
tonight.
because your entire mitigation is on this page here, which is page A14. It is one paragraph, and two things of trees, but it does say in here other remediations, and one of my questions was where and what are you doing?
Yep. So what we've realized through this process, and that's those kind of clarifications have been provided in the revision of the plan sheets tonight.
Okay.
And there are those same information that's in our wetland assessment report is provided in the plan sheets. I forget which sheet numbers they are.
CS 502.
So CS 502 is where all the mitigation details are. There's additional details, notations, planting schedule, etc.
Are you going to go over each one of them tonight?
We can, yes, yeah, we're planning on doing it as part of our presentation. One thing I will note is that, we can, assuming that this hearing gets continued, we can certainly modify our wetland assessment report to sync it up with the kind of the new plans that were submitted tonight, so that everything lines up together, so that you have both kind of the narrative description in our wetland assessment report matches with the revised plan sets. So, because right now our discussion is only for wetland 17 in that report, but that report was issued 6 weeks ago. So we haven't had a chance to update it yet, but we did get an update of the plan sets. So the plan sets are accurate. They were submitted tonight. The narrative needs to kind of sync up with it and catch up with it.
So I see quickly breezing through the documents that located wetlands 5, 6, and 7, and I see the notice change that there is now mitigation offered up for those 3. That may be a gesture that's equivalent to mitigating wetlands 17, which might wait. I guess I understand where you're headed with it now. I think your suggestion is probably what is going to be needed. We have no review done of this, and I agree, you need the mitigation plan in the wetland assessment report to be modified. I understand what you're saying, to reflect the mitigation in 5, 6, and 7, and subtract it or delete it or what have you in 17, it doesn't really matter. Okay.
Correct.
So, and yes, you can modify the plan, but I don't see, number one, how they could possibly act on that tonight. So there's that issue, and they're unreviewed drawings. So anyway, I'll let
If I could
comment
help,
for a
I
moment.
agree with you 100%. We wanted to get those to you, we've been trying to get them done, it's a lot. And we're trying to address your comments. That, we understand that. My only suggestion would be if it's up to the commission whether they want to continue the public hearing. They don't want to continue the public hearing, they just want to wait for staff comment and have a deliberation next time around, that's fine too. But we understand you're not going to make a decision tonight. That's your call.
Let them continue for, let's see what's going on.
Can I ask a question?
Absolutely.
Can you refresh our memory? Last meeting, you said you couldn't give us certain information because you couldn't get that information until this like an approval from us, from DEEP. How is that impacted by this change in plans? Just refresh our memory as to what that situation is and what's conditional on what.
Yeah, I'll address that. That's more a question of the roadmap. I mean, we get far afield because we're just talking about that wetland and what we're going to mitigate. And I understand we're changing what we want to mitigate because after our discussion about Area 17, we're realizing it's just not going to work. But we don't want to fill anything else other than the wetland we started with. That's the only thing we're talking about. As far as information we needed from DEEP, it was more along the lines of Area 17, to be quite honest. We hadn't gotten all the PCB information. Now we know where that area is. We have all, it's pretty much delineated, so now we know we're going to have to go back to EPA and DEP with that. And they're going to tell us, we're pretty certain to dig it up. So.
Okay, I just wanted to confirm that was about 17.
That was about 17.
Okay, that was a 17 issue.
A new and different application.
That will be the next, there's only one more application as far as I'm concerned. I don't want to see more than one. The next application will be everything wrapped up into one nice big pile. This is just so we can start bringing the fill, which, as Chairman mentioned, it's going to take us 2 years, at least. And quite honestly, just to buy the equipment is going to take us 2 years to build the facility. So this is a long-term project. This is not going to happen overnight. We're just giving you the roadmap of what comes next. So, if that makes sense.
We want to skip ahead to the mitigation. Yeah. So, getting into kind of the update to our wetland mitigation plan, what we're showing on this figure is kind of the overall look at the new mitigation area. What's highlighted in magenta or pink is essentially the areas that encompass wetlands 5, 6, and 7. They don't have surface connection, but they're all located in close proximity to each other. The green shading around there is the upland review area, 50-foot upland review area that is not being impacted by the linear fill material that's being part of this proposal. So just for comparison, for wetland 17 that we were proposing last month, we were looking at enhancing that wetland area, which is a little over an acre in size. And then enhancing the upland review area around it, which was about 1.5 acres in size. So with this new proposal, shifting our mitigation efforts and any wetland enhancement efforts to wetlands 5, 6, and 7 is the detail of that mitigation plan. We're enhancing almost 2.5 acres of wetlands.
And do you have an enhancement plan other than that?
So all that we have, the details are in the plan sheets. So I don't know if we have those that we can go to, but essentially they are.
CS 100?
502.
It should be at the end of the 500 series.
Yeah, it's,
You get a CS 502.
Yeah, it should be very.
The last one.
Yep.
Or the last one.
so, yep, so that sheet provides all essentially the construction sequence and goals of the mitigation, plan. What's required for plantings, for invasive species removal, for reporting requirements, and then monitoring during construction of that as well as post-construction. And on the side of that is the detailed, the planting schedule of the various native wetland shrubs and upland shrubs, trees, and herbaceous material that is planted both within the wetland and within the surrounding upland review area.
Okay, so you're not changing the wetlands themselves?
That's correct. Right now, there's a fair amount of invasives within those wetland systems. Phragmites australis, common reed, dominates quite a bit of those wetland areas. Wetland 6 has a fairly large open water portion of it. There's native species within that area. There's no need to touch the open water, but the fringes or the bordering wetlands to that open water, which comprise at least half of that wetland system, and then wetlands 7 and 5 are just vegetated wetlands that are dominated by common breeding. So we'll remove the invasives, control those, and then plant with native species both within the wetlands to enhance water quality functions, wildlife habitat function, etc. And then do the same thing in the surrounding upland review area, which the understory is dominated by invasives once again. We'll remove those, put in native plants in that area. Those are kind of near wetland plants, areas that have moderate drainage or well-drained soil, so they're suitable for that hydraulic condition in soil.
Yeah, the entire site has a fairly good drainage soil. It's not a clay base. I went through and I read your stormwater report, and I was very surprised to see that it was as pervious as it was. And, having so close to the Quinnipiac River. You got any life in that? Did you spot any life in these wetlands? When I was out there, it was late in the season, but there was aquatic life in 4. 4 was, and I understand, it's an industrial site, I get it. But it was quite appealing to see what was there in wetland 4. Are you, besides the fact, is there any life in there, are you going to go in and are you going to remove any of the trash, tire? We ask this for everything.
Yep.
Whatever's there, are you doing any of that?
Yep.
If you are, how are you going to do it? I mean, some solids are left solid until you move them in and they're, they're transient. So what are you going to do?
So your first question about aquatic life, we definitely saw, shorebirds, ducks, geese, swans, using some of the open water areas. Those will be utilizing that wetland system. With our enhancements to the surrounding habitat, it'll only enhance that habitat value.
Did you see any fish in here?
We didn't, for that area, that particular wetland, that's fairly shallow water, we didn't notice any finfish in there. Not to say that there couldn't be, but what we're proposing for enhancement wouldn't adversely affect that type of finfish habitat. It would only enhance it.
I'm sorry, you're discussing 5, 6, or 7?
5, 6, and 7, all 3 wetlands.
Thank you.
But only wetland 6 has open water habitat. It's fairly shallow. So you can tell it's shallow because there's semi-aquatic and also herbaceous material growing almost in the middle of it. So the water depth is only a couple of feet through that wetland system, unlike some of the larger open water areas where the water is considerably deeper. We did take your comments at last meeting and notations as far as additional cleanup of railroad ties that are particularly located in wetland 6. There's new notations in the construction sequence to remove that material. More likely than not, you either use an excavator or a long reach backhoe, chain them, and just haul them out of there.
Did you do a water sample, see how bad the water is?
No, that's not something we typically do.
Because I know the last meeting you kept talking about the poor quality water, and I'm not saying it isn't, but when we saw the wildlife we saw, it's like, how bad is the water,
Yeah, I mean, it's all the open water bodies are eutrophic, because of, likely the historic use of the property and import of fill material and whatnot, and also the limited vegetation that's located along the, dense, real good dense herbaceous vegetation around the perimeters of these features. So the way the site is operating as far as runoff, there's probably some excess nutrients that are leaching into those open water bodies, and so they do you'll get algae blooms. So when we're talking about poor water quality, we're not talking about contaminants per se, but as far as overall aquatic health for an open water body, that's kind of the context we talk about as a wetland ecologist. Tim talks about it in totally different terms.
And you also talked about seasonally saturated areas. Are they vernal pools? And what would be the difference?
So the seasonal saturated areas that we did see in some of the wetland pockets, and in a large majority of these wetland features are entirely man-made. They're not natural wetland habitats.
I believe everything there is man-made.
Yep.
Everything, I do.
So some of the seasonal saturation that we saw was pretty shallow in nature, generally less than 6 inches, and typically, that would not support amphibian breeding habitat. So we don't feel that any of the wetlands support vernal pool habitat on the site. And it's a combination of probably the historic industrial use of the property, the surrounding industrial development, and also the lack of quality forested habitat, both in the uplands and wetlands. And typically, what you would see for vernal pool species, dependent species, you would look at wood frog and spotted salamander. The habitat quality for this site doesn't really support those type of species.
But we didn't test for them?
We have not performed a vernal pool survey on the site.
Or a
We do
test for any of that in these wetlands here? Because, I mean, some of the stuff you got to test in the spring, and I don't know if you did it or not.
So Wetland 6 has essentially some permanent open water. So that generally doesn't support vernal pool habitat. Wetlands 5 and 7, those are just saturated. I mean, you may get a little bit of inundation, but you're talking just a couple inches and it's short duration. So those would not support vernal pool habitat.
Okay. Carry on.
So the numbers are, we've significantly expanded both the enhancements to wetland areas from wetland 17, as well as the upland review area enhancements went up to 2 acres. So this is a pretty robust mitigation plan to offset the project's activities within wetland 16, as well as some of the upland review areas on the project. So I feel that it's a commensurate level. We're looking at, when you look at for mitigation to impact ratio, generally speaking, you're either going 2 to 1, 4 to 1,
Well, we really
maybe a
don't
little
know.
bit higher.
We don't know what kind of damage you're going to do when you bring in all this fill.
Well,
So, I
we can
mean,
get
it's
into that discussion, but this mitigation plan would have a 50 to 1 mitigation ratio, which is extremely high.
If we left the site alone. If you went in and did this and we left the site the way it is, you're going to alter the site. This is complex. This isn't like somebody filling in a little puddle in your backyard. This is pretty complex. Because the fill you're bringing in is going to determine what kind of pollutants that you're going to put into the water. And if you bring in complete clay, which we don't know what you're bringing in, we're going to have an impervious surface. You basically got, clay. If you bring in straight sand, we're going to have a lot of soil absorption. So I mean, bear with us. We don't know yet.
We've looked at the drainage patterns that are feeding all these various wetland systems in the existing condition as well as the proposed condition.
Yeah, I studied your
In the stormwater report documents, they were
5
maintaining
watersheds.
those.
If you want to go there, it goes back to your 5 watersheds as they exist are operating as they exist. But they're going to change, even though you made all new, not new, very similar watersheds for the future. My question is, how in God's name do you know what those watersheds are going to be? Because it depends upon the type of fill you bring in. If you brought in all straight crushed concrete, the water's going to run right through. You bring in silt again, it's going to be much different. And as that silt dries and compacts, it's going to be hard. It's going to be almost like pavement. And I question your watersheds. I'm this hard on everybody. I really am. Don't.
No, I appreciate your
Have you done any
comment.
studies of the fill you're bringing in?
If I agree.
Yeah.
Come on in.
Tim can address that. I mean, but from a.
And I know we're jumping around. I get that.
From a volumetric standpoint, we've analyzed pre and post conditions.
Yep.
We're changing some of the runoff conditions.
Yep.
You know, your CN values. We've analyzed that. We're controlling some of the increase in velocity for discharges off some of the slopes. Properly controlling that. But volumetrically, you're not changing, you're not drying
You don't
or
think
wetting up some of these
You don't think
wetlands.
you're increasing the velocity off of the slopes?
I can speak to that.
Yeah, Dave can talk to that part, but we have analyzed that. We don't feel that, you know, the proposed fill and grading is going to adversely affect the wetland hydrology of these particular wetlands.
Again, if you bring in sand, pure sand, and you put your metal mix on top of that, that's good, and we get a 2-inch rainstorm, or 1-inch rainstorm, you're gonna get a certain amount that leaches through and comes out. You bring in clay and silt, you put your metal mix on top of that, 90% of that water is gonna go down your little troughs, and it's gonna go right into those wetlands, not gonna go into the soil.
And Dean, then your analysis, and David, is based on somewhat a no-build situation.
Right.
So at this point, it would be the interim situation of having all the fill there and having no trash plant on top of it, correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
That's what the
Alan, you see
application
where I'm
is
going?
right now.
I do.
Okay, I wanna make sure that I'm
Is it time?
communicating correctly.
Maybe David, if you want to.
His data is super for an existing site. The data he's providing, I'm questioning because I don't know the fill he's bringing in. If he brings in X kind of fill, I'm going to have this kind of leaching, I'm going to have this kind of impervious surface, I'm going to have this kind of evaporation, I'm going to have this kind of velocity running off of the hills. You bring in the next kind, and I know that they're looking to bring in the New Haven Harbor. Has anybody dug New Haven Harbor before? Did they test it? Do we know what it is? Has anybody done any samples there as to what it is? And if they did, and that's what you're basing your numbers on, then I'm a lot more comfortable.
Yeah, Tim can address it, but there are strict requirements on the type of material that can be brought in under this application.
Strict requirement sounds great. Break it down. What is strict requirement?
Yep.
And then, when you break it down to strict requirement, go back to your maps and all the data that you're providing us. Is it so? If you wind up with all sand out of the New Haven Harbor, it's one way. If you wind up with all clay out of New Haven Harbor, it's another. I'm not a genius, but silts move and then they stop. Where do they stop? Where the waves stop. That's the harbor. So
Yeah,
I mean, it seems to me as though there are going to be fines. And I could be wrong, and you know what? It's not my job, I don't know. Just a dumb farmer, you know, so bear with me.
If you're a farmer, you're not dumb. I've worked with farmers.
Well,
Maybe we should move on. It seemed that Tim had some things to say, and David, and then maybe we can go through. It would appear that the applicant is prepared to grant the commission an extension.
I know, but someday these questions got to be answered.
Yes, and then maybe after that, we could summarize the items that are still outstanding, taking kind of a guess in a way at what might be in the drawings that we were given tonight. So that, and part of it has been explained. But anyway, maybe they want to finish their presentation and then we'll.
I'll try to limit my questions.
No, that's totally fine. We appreciate your input on this. So, yeah, I mean, I think at the end of our presentation, we'll have addressed most of your concerns, but, you know, we welcome any of your comments, questions, as well as the rest of the commission. So. Yep, there, we're done with this. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. For the record, my name is Dave Gagnon. I'm a civil engineer with Langen Engineering, here representing the applicant. There was some questions about, from the last meeting, what a section or profile would look like through the site. So we did prepare a cross-section through the center of the site to give you kind of a typical section of what we're trying to do. So I'll run through this just to give people an understanding of what this would look like, what the fill would look like, how that's going to be capped, and how that's going to interact with the rest of the site. So we cut a section right through the middle of the site, right here. You're looking to the north. It's not in your plan set, but we can provide it for you. Thanks. So we cut a section through the middle of the site. To read this section, you have to pretend you're standing to the south and you're looking north. So from left to right, this area right here, this blue line represents the property line on the western edge of the property. So that's right here. That's abutting the Amtrak parcel. So the blue line, you can see this dashed line right here represents the existing topography of the site. So running left to right. And as Bill and others have mentioned, the site undulates because of the former use as the hump trail. You could see, or the hump tracks, you could see one of those humps right here. So this hump is roughly 20 feet high. And what we're trying to do in this particular section is to level off the site. So you can see we, looking to the right in blue here, this is the proposed imported fill. In this particular area, we have to bring in roughly 10 feet of fill to level off the site. So the proposed grade, you can see in this line at the top, this is at roughly elevation 20, tying into existing grade by the hump on the left, roughly 10 feet of fill over this area. This fill will be capped with topsoil and planted with a meadow mix. And I have some more information on that, which I'll get into. As we taper off, we go to the right, so this is more in this area, getting closer to the wetlands. We have a maximum slope on any fill on the site of 3 to 1. So this would represent a 3 to 1 slope maximum. The edge of our limit disturbance is roughly right here at this green line, which represents somewhere in this area. Beyond that, so 50 feet beyond that, this red line represents the 50-foot upland review. So we are 100 feet away from the wetland. This area here is the upland review enhancement area that Dean spoke to. So that's that purple area here. So this area will be enhanced, planted, or invasive species removed. And this here is a wetland 6 that Dean spoke about. So this would be the mitigated wetland area. So we just wanted to give you a sense of what a typical cross-section of the site would look like. So this is, as I mentioned, roughly elevation 20. That's consistent for most of the southern half of the site. So this is all elevation 20 here. As we go north, the site does build up another 10 feet, and that's to enable future development. And we mentioned this last time, but the first building has a big bunker in it. So that kind of raises the site. So that's why this area here is 10 feet higher than the rest of the site. And as you go north, we tie into existing grades. So the northern end of the site is 10 feet higher. So it's going to be a level flat pad tying into the target area. We do have to take off 3 or 4 feet to level this, and that's going to be hauled down to New Haven as Bill mentioned. So I wanted to give people a sense of what this would look like. And this is drawn at 1-to-1 scale. It is a large scale, but it is 1-to-1 vertical to horizontal. And I think hopefully this will answer some of the questions that came up. But this is what the final state will look like, prior to the eco park. So this is a section of that meadow mix cap. So here you have the imported fill in yellow. On top of that, we would bring in 6 inches of topsoil. So this would be clean topsoil.
You're going to do 6 inches throughout the whole site?
Any area that we're impacting would be 6 inches of topsoil. And that's part of our plan set, so that's documented.
But I'm sorry, that detail is in the revised plan set?
It was in the original plan set, and it's also in the revised plan set. So this came directly, we cleaned it up, but this came directly from our plan set.
No geotextile fabric, nothing like that?
We're not proposing any, no. So it would be imported fill, capped with 6 inches of topsoil, and then planted with the meadow mix. And the meadow mix is really a native mix of grasses, flowers, pollinator species. And this is an example of something we did in Windsor here. This is a meadow mix. It also stabilizes the slope, provides habitat for birds and bees and such. So this is what it'll look like at the end of the day. If there's any questions, I'm happy to answer any questions before I move on.
The meadow mix, is it self-seeding?
There would be initial, you'd have to go out there and seed it initially, and after that, it would be able to establish itself.
Okay.
Yep.
And do you plan on maintaining it in any such way?
Yeah, I mean, if there's any issues with it, the idea is you don't have to mow it, you just kind of let it do its thing. It'll take care of itself. But if there are any areas that are not stable or getting eroded, we have to go back and clean it up.
They're all
Thank you. And there were some questions on other alternates that we looked at. So we pulled together some of the alternates we looked at in the past. We've been looking at this site for, as Bill mentioned, a long time. We've gone through a number of different iterations to get where we are today. There's a lot to balance on this site. This is one of our earlier passes. This here, you can see the development footprint is much larger than what we're currently proposing. And that's because the demand is very high. We could build a bigger facility, but it really doesn't fit. So initially, this is the thought. It essentially doubles all the buildings. The issues we had with this is there was a much higher wetland impact, and it also spilled over to the Amtrak parcel. So this was an earlier concept that we considered, and we decided, this was too much. We're gonna pull it back a little bit. You could see all the direct wetland impacts this concept would have. This is wetland 17, completely filled in. Wetland 16 impacted. Wetland 11 directly impacted. Also wetland 2, 5, and 6. So we thought this was too much. So we pared this back. This was another concept that we came up with. This is alternate number 2. We reduced the amount of buildings on the site. We got rid of, in the previous concept, a lot of buildings were doubled up. That was cut in half in this concept, and everything was elongated. As you can see, there's still a number of wetland impacts. We tried to stay away from wetland 17. There's still, all these areas in orange were direct wetland impacts. As you can see here, this figure, almost 2 acres of direct wetland impacts. So we still thought that was unacceptable. We really tried to minimize our direct wetland impact. Wetland 16 is right in the middle of the site. We tried to avoid it. We couldn't figure out a way to avoid it and still make this project happen. So which brings us to where we are today. So this concept had almost 2 acres of direct wetland impact. We got that down to 0.05 acres. So we're really doing our best to try and alleviate the direct impact of the wetlands.
One thing I want to make sure the community understands, you talk about Amtrak, I don't know if we're going to point this out. The Sullivan parcel, the parcel we're talking about, is in here, it's about 90 acres. There's another, and if you come down here, this is the trail. The trail ends at Amtrak. People just keep walking on the Amtrak property. This piece all the way through here, all along the river, belongs to Amtrak. This is an active Amtrak site. They're probably going to be building a maintenance yard here, so that's the rumor anyway. So this is an active Amtrak site. They access it from over here, they come in through here, and they also have a bridge across the river they used to use that might put back. But this is not what we're talking about. This is their Amtrak site, and they're still using it, and this is the freight yard that we're talking about on the other side. just to make that.
Thank you, Bill. You know, and from here, what we decided to do is delete a number of these buildings. We felt it was too much. This building went away. We had to talk to our designers who were designing these facilities, reduce the footprint of these buildings as much as we possibly could to get everything to fit. So that's what we're currently working off of, and that got us down to the 0.05 acres of direct wetland impact. So I just wanted to share those, kind of the process, and we've gone through dozens of concepts. These are just a sampling, but we really try to minimize our impact to the wetland. That concludes our formal presentation. We're happy to speak to any questions that you may have, or if you want us to bring up the plans, we can go through the plans.
I got more questions in there.
Just a little housekeeping. This set of drawings, we will mark Exhibit 2A, public hearing session number 2A. Okay? Thank you.
One of my questions is, have you guys worked out anything about the entrance off of Universal Drive? Because if you're gonna go in and fill the wetlands, and you're gonna start bringing in the fill, I guess we gotta talk about how you're getting it here. I know that the previous application had a bond out for the entrance to be rebuilt, has not been rebuilt, and what are your...
It's a very old application you're referring to.
Oh, absolutely.
It's a very old, I know, I've had discussion with Andy Anastasia about this. Way back when Nettleton Avenue was cut off when they built the highway, Nettleton Avenue continues across on the other side of Universal Drive South, that there was a bond put forward to have that road rebuilt.
I'm talking about the entrance next to Peterbilt.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
There is an entrance next to Peterbilt that is being used as an easement. There's another piece right next to that easement. That is the road you're talking about.
Yes, it is.
As part of the application, we go back to P&Z for the final application, we're going to complete the road. That is Andy Anastasia.
So how do you plan on getting the fill into that site?
The easement's already existing. Tractor trailers going in and out of that site every day.
Yeah, it looks like Vietnam, though. It's got bomb craters in it.
It's got to be cleaned up. We have to probably, we'll take care of the craters on the road, do all that, but the end result, once we do build the facility, will be to expand that road, finish Nettleton Avenue, and have it
So
go in.
you're gonna go through other people's property for now to get into your property?
It's Andy's property, my partner's property, we're going to go through.
A different parcel of property to
That he
Andy's
owns,
parcel?
yes.
Okay.
So somewhat of a question, since you've completed the formal presentation, just a discussion about my and Andy's town engineer's comments, which were revised slightly to reflect.
Well, I was gonna take them one by one.
Pardon?
I was gonna take them one by one.
That's fair enough. I just want to stress the fact that while this is a request for a permit to conduct regulated activity, it's also a referral. So we don't have a P&Z application yet for the fill permit, but really, this commission should see what Planning and Zoning Commission will see in terms of the fill permit. So what they need is the portions of Section 8.9 of the zoning regulations that involve the more pragmatic aspects of the of the work, if you will, and where the trucks would enter, and that would cover what Frank was just discussing. But just to explain the need for it, it's just to balance that. If it's a referral, then they need to really refer on exactly what's being proposed to P&Z.
There's a referral from inland wetlands to P&Z. Okay,
Exactly.
I understand. So, and I think you were looking at your comments and felt that was a P&Z comment, and I understand now why you put it there.
Yeah, that's why we keep telling you, this is so intertwined, it's quite unique.
Is that the end of the process, Alan? In other words, we vote one way or the other, it refers to planning and zoning. Once they provide the fill permit, then the work can begin? Or is there anything else subsequent to that?
Part of the fill permit, there would also be a coastal site plan that would be required, that would be made concurrently and acted on as a sister application. So you have the CAM app, you have the fill permit. This is a fill permit referral and a permit to conduct.
And if I could, if you approve it, refer it to P&Z, P&Z approves it, then we go to the state, and then they have to approve it.
That goes back to Ian's roadmap.
Well, no, this is just for the fill.
Right. But this is what we need. We need for every step of the way, okay, the fill permit is here, to this permit, to that permit, how it goes.
Right.
We're not,
Right, and then we come back to with the rest of it later.
So to answer John's question, yes. And then to go back to Anna's question earlier, where is this in context of other sister approvals, et cetera, in the roadmap that you were referring to? That would be helpful to some of the members. That goes beyond the town.
It does, and I think, let me make one thing clear. If you approve it, P&Z approves it, the state approves it, all we can do is fill the land. We're done now. We can't do anything else without coming back again. That's it.
and a lot of us worry that we'll be done then.
Well, it would be nice and clean and we'd be able to sell it, quite honestly. But that we don't want to be done then. We want to finish the project because it'll be a very valuable piece of land once we're done filling it. Right now, it's worthless, quite honestly. You can't do anything with it. You can't even, you're not even supposed to have to do an application at this point. Because that's why the fence is around Area 17. I think I get that right, Area 17, yeah.
To my check, just to answer your comment, the acceptance of the bud material by DEP is contingent upon a remedial action plan, which is contingent upon the site being developed. They all have to be in place.
That's why, again, Anna's, we gotta have a roadmap. So we understand this. Because all of those things do matter.
Yes. And our $4 million grant depends on us building that facility. If we don't build the facility, we don't get the money. Or we have to give it back, actually.
Okay, so, Billy, grab the comments, start with number 1, and just go down the list. I think it's the easiest way and the most time-consuming way, because you don't want my questions. Not all of them tonight, obviously.
I think number 1
Billy, just read it out loud, sir.
the plans are incomplete in terms of existing conditions, dimensions, and area. I did give you an 8.5 by 11 sheet showing you the plan, but I think tonight we've given you an extensive plan. Hopefully that will satisfy number 1. I understand the 8.5 by 11 sheet wasn't enough, but I wanted to give you something to look at.
Hard to see.
And that's what we showed you tonight, just a blown-up copy of that. The plans are incomplete in terms of, number 2, the plans are incomplete in terms of detailing the proposed activity. All the information required by section 8.9 of the planning and zoning regulations must be provided, including drawings of proposed site circulation of the entire fill operation, fill sequence, stockpile, and mixing locations. We do not have that yet, and that is something we thought was a P&Z condition. I understand now we need it for this commission. We'll get that to you as soon as possible.
Correct.
Soil reports and mapping needed to show complete flagging information and the numbers because you couldn't see the mapping. I think that is clear in the map now, so we think we've addressed that. Detailed environmental assessment report, providing detailed assessments of wildlife habitats, vegetative habitats,
Did you
impacts
check
of
into the
proposed
threat?
activities. I think Dean can address this one.
So I'll get to your question, but first, Alan, with respect to, we included some of the information in our wetland assessment report that's in comment 4. But as far as additional details, if you could at some point provide us with some additional clarity on what exactly you're looking for, or if you have an example report that we should follow as a template, that would be helpful for us to properly address that comment.
Alan, what's your
And we
referring
appreciate
to?
it.
Number 4, comment number 4. And probably we can provide something.
All right, that'd be very much appreciated. With respect to the rare species, we still haven't received any type of response from the Natural Diversity Database. I checked in with them a couple of times over the last 4-week period and have not received an update. We have several applications in front of them. We know that I got a response on one of them that they are behind on their reviews. As soon as we get something, we'll share that with the commission.
Because I'm going to be honest with you, Dominion Trucking. They put a lot of money into a piece of property in this town, and there was a beetle on the property, and it stopped them dead. We had nothing to do with it.
You're talking about Ober's property.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The 55
I know the
acres
piece.
there. Yeah. And I mean, you know, we approved it, Billy, and the beetle stopped them dead. So that's why, I know it sounds funny, you know, kids harping on that. Yeah, because I want you to look into it. Yeah, you can come back and tell us. That's awesome.
Yep.
But you'd be surprised what is around, and then that creates a whole new process.
Yeah, so there was, back in 2014, in that time period, there was an initial consultation with Natural Diversity Database. They produced the list of potential species in the area.
Because we know
Fortunately, beetles weren't on that list, but you know, at that point, nothing else moved forward. I did review that list. The majority of those species are associated with the tidal marsh areas and intertidal waters, particularly the Quinnipiac River, but also Little River. So the habitat requirements for those, the majority of those species are provided on adjacent habitat, not particularly the site. But to your point, you know, until we get a response from them, we don't know what particulars we'll need to do to kind of resolve any concerns we have. I will indicate to you that, you know, whatever concerns they have, we will resolve them with DEEP. But at this point, it's an unknown.
Just to your point, too, 7 years ago, there was a permit issued on this site by DEEP after review of the National Biodiversity Database. Not that it means we don't have to go there,
You got a good shot that
a
you're
good
not
shot
going to
that
get in
there's
trouble.
nothing there.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes. I understand that.
Alternative analysis report with alternative plans. I think we tried to show you that tonight. What we did in the past showed you that we were actually trying to buy some of Amtrak's property. They wouldn't talk to us because they want to utilize it themselves. So they're going forward with their plans. We corrected that, and then we shrunk our plan even more to make it fit properly on our site.
So I'll just add to Bill's comment on that. As I indicated earlier about syncing up our wetland assessment report with the new wetland mitigation plan details, we do have a discussion of alternatives analysis in our original assessment report. We'll update that with the two alternatives that Dave provided during our presentation. So again, there'll be some additional narrative provided in an update of our report.
And just for the commission's edification, while you haven't heard anything about Amtrak, under federal law, they don't have to come before you. So they're exempt. They can do what they want.
And that's why we worry about what they've transported.
Yes.
Okay.
I understand.
All right.
Analysis of the proposed fill material and specific chemical and physical characteristics. We gave you the BUD summary. We show you what is allowed under state regulations. I believe it's not federal, under state regulations. And again, as I said, we're happy to commit to that as part of the approval process, because that is what we're allowed to bring in, and the state will not allow us to do anything else. So
At some point in time, whether it's tonight or another night, for us and for the public, can you break down and talk about what that is, how many parts per million? You know, we have the numbers, guys, we have the numbers, but you don't. So I'm kind of wondering if at some point in time, you can address that for the knowledge of the people.
I think that's fine. Mr. Myjack is a brilliant man at that.
Awesome, thank you.
Wetland mitigation report and plans are sparse. Must include details and full scope of the mitigation effort, including trash and debris removal, soil remediation, grading, and plantings. I think we've addressed that in wetland 5, 6, and 7, which is our mitigation for this proposal. We're not going beyond that at this point in time until after the fill is brought in and we go forward to the next phase. But that's what we're presenting to the commission tonight, and I think we've addressed that.
Now, Bill, I think that you've addressed the drawing component of that, but Dean has said that the wetland assessment report will need to be caught up to provide the written narrative for what that would be.
You are correct.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's exactly what we'll do.
Yeah. That was number 7. Number 8, details are needed on existing site soil contamination measures necessary to remediate the site. We gave you the 2017 and 2019 Phase 2-3 environmental site assessment. If that's sufficient, what we will do as well, as soon as it's ready, about when the proposed wraps can be ready, and maybe before the next meeting, so we can provide you with that as well, if that's done before the next meeting.
Yes, I had asked for that because I asked you at the last meeting, how close were you? You said pretty close for all the test results, the test bits. We're going to want that. There's no question.
And more detail required on the purpose and need for proposed activity. See, proposed fill operations exceed that for any conceivable site development plan. Hopefully we address that. The undulations of this property, you can't take down the humps. You have to raise up to the humps and then cover over them and cap them. There's no other way of doing it, and that's why you need to fill it up as much as we are, and also try to keep it as level as possible. If you look at the detail of our plan, which you can't really see that well on these maps, you have to go into much more detailed maps, but the facility is interactive. Each building is a conveyor belt that's completely enclosed that connects all the buildings, that the material goes back and forth between buildings on, so nothing goes outside.
So you're going to tube it?
Yeah, exactly. And so it all has to be level.
And that's good because it's hermetically sealed and you won't get smell, you won't get dust. You won't have introduction of rain.
We have half-acre biofilters that it's negative air pressure that runs through out through the biofilters, so no smell on the outside. I've been in Germany, I've been to several of them. It's amazing, there's no smell. Till you go inside, then you smell.
Okay. All right, Billy, you do understand that after Alan and Andy look at these maps, there's going to be more questions. There's going to be more comments. We're not swamping you. I want to be up front with you. But I mean, these guys have not looked at this whole set of maps. And of course, I haven't looked, and the commissioners have not had a chance to take a peek at them.
I understand. That's why I said
I did it again. And Billy, I held off about 80% of my questions. I got yelled at, so.
You did good.
At this time, I'm going to ask the commissioners. Got any questions?
I have a question. About the bud, the materials, I know you said you would elaborate on them, which will be of great interest to everybody here, because I think that's something that people are concerned about. Can you just clarify sort of big picture, are you given, 10 options and you pick one, or how do you make the choice as to which one among many you choose, and when do you make that choice?
Troy? You want to? Yeah, I think you're better at this than I am. You know more about it.
Tim Myjack with EPI. So beneficial use material, it provides a benefit. But provides a benefit to help assist with getting to a remedial action plan to be protective of human health and the environment. And the state's goal with beneficial use material is to also assist with providing economic value to assist with moving these brownfield projects along with remediation. So the BUD authorization from the state of Connecticut has to meet the cleanup criteria of the site. It's not just going to the market and saying, we're going to take anybody's environmentally impacted material and bring it to the site. It's strictly regulated by using like material. So like material that we're allowed to leave on the site. We talked about PCBs, exceeding TSCA levels and standards that we have to dig it up and we have to take it off the site. Okay? It doesn't mean we can bring in that same kind of PCB material and put it on the site. We could use like materials that were allowed to leave on the site that's already impacted by similar materials. Now, we provided some additional information that might not have been part of the original package because we introduced it. We thought we had enough information there, but you asked to dig down in the weeds a little bit more on the technical stuff. The parts per million, the ethyl this. So we provided that. So, Frank, you said a couple times, what's the difference if you bring in clay material versus sandy material? That comes out with the testing. The testing to prove that this material is acceptable to bring into the site is the burden of the person who's generating that material.
Correct, but what I was referring to, so I'm going to correct you, is when you put all that material, whatever testing you did to it, the actual material will be different in different areas. And depending upon the materials that you bring in, and I'm not talking about their toxicity, I am talking about their clay or sand ability is going to change the way that site drains. If it's very permeable, it's going to seep into the ground. If it's clay-like, it's not going to seep into the ground. It's going to stay on the surface, it's going to run off more. So I'm not talking, I'm concerned about your toxicity. What I'm talking about then is what's happening to our wetlands. How much water goes into our wetlands? How fast does it go? And what does it bring?
And that's,
I might be better off if you had clay, because it's going to cap it and it's going to be an interrupter. And even though your velocities may be greater, your toxicity will stay underneath. If you bring in sand, it could leach more. Could, not necessarily, but that's what I was referring to. I hadn't got into the levels of toxicity.
so I think I heard from you. So I understand you're talking about general water runoff versus toxicity. So when it comes to the toxicity, what's allowed to be brought as beneficial use?
You put that in your budget summary, but I want my commissioners to understand what you wrote, and I want the people to understand what you wrote, or those parameters.
The testing requirements, not for water runoff, but for toxicity, flushes out if it's a sand, if it's a silt, you know, and what has the ability to leach or not. And that's a very strict requirement on a per tonnage basis, that they have to test for everything you can imagine to prove that it meets the standard to be brought to the site.
So, Tim, in terms of who sets that standard, I think someone asked that, or how do you pick? Deep picks, correct?
Yeah, we don't have control over that. We have to meet the requirements for the remedial action plan for deep and the requirements of the BUD requirements for deep. What we're allowed to, so this is a, who's familiar with the remediation standard regulations? We have standards. We have standards set based on use, industrial, commercial. We have standards based on water quality, GA or GB. We have to meet the standards of the industrial commercial use and the GB groundwater protection criteria, which set what we can bring to the site. We don't have to meet the standard for GA or residential. We have to meet the standard for the use of the site, which encompasses the remedial action plan for all the material that's already on site also. So yes, DEEP prescribes, you know, that we can't add, you know, if this was a residential site, we can't bring in industrial commercial level environmentally impacted soil. You know, if it was a residential site, we'd only be able to bring in residentially level impacted soil to try to bring it to a, you know.
In the past, we received
That didn't answer your question, did it?
No,
a materials acceptability protocol from DEEP, which laid out those standards. And what you seem to be offering at this moment is, this is the worst case scenario from DEEP. We don't have a determination yet from DEEP. Is that accurate or no?
DEEP has an outline of what this beneficial use program should look like. They have an outline, and they tell us, you know, what we have to apply for. You know, they have an outline that says you can't bring in material that's going to be, you know, worse than anything else that's already on there. So we have to follow that to a T. We have to document that to a T. So when it comes down to what concentrations, you know, I heard that question, you know, what concentrations or what types of material, you know, we could sit down for a couple hours. There's lists. There's lists of, you know, one analysis for volatiles, let's say, you know, probably has 30 compounds. You know, one analysis for metals might have another 20 compounds. So there's lists of things that have to be tested for, and depending on the standard for the site, which is prescribed by industrial commercial setting use and GB groundwater protection, that prescribes it's above or below this number. It's that clear cut. If it's above it, we can't accept it. If it's below it, it meets the standard for the site and the cleanup objective for the site, and we could accept it. So it's all on an individual lead, arsenic, chromium, trichlorobenzene. It's all prescribed by compound, by action numbers, what we could bring or not bring onto the site.
does the cap, the clean fill cap, enter into their protocol?
So
The
when we bring,
thickness of that and the composition of it?
so when we bring, yeah, cap's a word, cap's a generic word for a lot of things. And, cap is a very prescribed word in lieu of using use restrictions and engineer controls. So we have to walk through this site. And I used the word dovetail last time with, what's above this soil, what's not above this soil. So in areas where there's grass surfaces, we might have to put 4 feet of, when I use the word clean, not beneficial use type material. If there's areas where we have asphalt, or if there's areas where we have buildings, we could bring that material right up against the bottom possibly. So each area of the site is going to dovetail, and then bringing in of this beneficial use material is going to dovetail with the plan of development. So when you said, you're gonna walk away, if you bring up, potential walk away, that's not the intent. You bring all this material, and it's a commitment. The state wants, if they're gonna authorize this, they're gonna want to see everything is in play, right to, the final. And we do too.
Exactly, but this is the very first step.
We want you to walk us through that.
Yeah, and this is the very first step, though. To get the site to development, we have to get an acknowledgement from the town that bringing in this fill, taking out the wetlands, but, because that's part of it, but bringing in this fill is an acceptable, now acceptable with contingencies of the state approving things. I think that would be more than acceptable, but we can't go to the state until this concept is accepted by the town. It's their process. It doesn't go the other way. We have to start here. So that's trying to educate you to the beneficial use, trying to educate, to the concentrations. Now, as far as the sources, New Haven Harbor is a potential source. They have to prove that they meet the standards on their end, testing. And then it has to be thoroughly reviewed. It has to be vetted out. So that's a potential source. It doesn't mean it is the source. There's a lot of potential sources that could come to the site, but they all have to be vetted out. And, that could be vetted out on a per truckload basis for one site, and that's all we ever see for that site, or it could be vetted out, for a site that has 300 truckloads. And the sampling frequency it's very prescribed based on yardages and tonnages. They don't just take one sample and bring in 50,000 yards. And that's all outlined within the beneficial use program that we
It's pretty
provide.
scary, one test for 250 yards, and then after that, you're doing every 500. I know what a pile of 250 yards looks like. It's not that big.
That is the state's prescribed program, and those quantities
And
and
I
those
don't
level of
think,
testing has been,
I don't think this commission would go with that. I doubt it.
that level
I
of
think it'd be
testing,
much more stringent.
that level of testing has been in play for many, many years. That's not new. That's not new. Those prescribed levels of testing aren't new. It all has to also be backed up with something called the conceptual site model, an understanding of what you're testing and why you're testing and where you're testing it. There's more to it than just one sample for every 250 yards. It has to make sense. It has to make sense what you're testing for. And that all has to be proven. It's not just like, hey, I got a couple of, we have to know exactly what the soil is, where it's coming from. There's a generator certification program.
It sounds like we have to trust you an awful lot.
It's trusting and managing it, and it's trusting the state of Connecticut.
It's very difficult for us on this side of the table to do that.
It takes a while to ramp up to this, and that's why we're here to help. And I apologize, did I get?
Not really, no. My question was just about the sort of procedure of picking what you're going to put there. I understand this restricts you. Let me just finish because I want to make sure you understand the question. This restricts you, it tells you what you can and can't do, right? I get that. So then you have to make a choice, what am I going to use? And let me make sure it's tested and, it has to comply with this and it's tested to make sure it complies with this. So I'm just trying to understand when and how do you make the decision of what to use?
Okay,
Is it because it's cheaper? I just want to know the criteria that you're thinking of when you're making that decision.
So, down the road, we're open for business, okay? We're open for business. All these approvals are in play. We start accepting essentially applications
we start accepting people's requests to potentially bring material to the site. They have to have formal forms filled out with where it's coming from, why it's coming from, and how it's being generated. So, you know, if we don't need crushed bricks, we could say we don't need it. You know, if we could use crushed bricks that week, we could say we could use it. You know, if we don't like the consistency of a dredge spoil material, then we could, you know, that's a physical parameter that we could possibly reject it. You know, as far as the analytical parameters, if we're not comfortable with the level of testing, we request more. You know, if we're not comfortable with, you know, something so close to an action level, we might ask them for the test more. It's extremely regulated. But, you know.
So the testing is done by the people who are supplying you the material?
Yep,
Okay.
certified lab, but we also reserve the right to go back and request additional testing, and it's often common for big sites that we go out and do our own, you know, third-party testing to validate things. So it's a very precise, prescribed program that we can't hear from.
Tim, does DEEP look at those test results also before the materials accepted?
DEEP's not going to approve every truckload coming in, but they will audit. They will audit us for documentation, how we're doing it. They don't accept or deny every truckload of material.
And one other thing about the dirt going back there, we're not concerned about trucks going back there. There's thousands of yards of contaminated dirt going onto that site every day and being loaded, maybe not every day, but over the course of a few weeks, and being loaded onto trains. It's going through that yard all the time.
The adjacent yard.
All the time, the adjacent freight yard. There's a pad back there that's
Well,
licensed by the
at
state.
this moment, we can't do anything about it.
Yeah. The state licenses it, it's part of the railroad, and you can't touch it. That's absolutely true. But that pad is licensed by DEP. They can license it, and they do oversee it. So it's the same process that's going on there that would be going on here. Different contamination levels. That's very contaminated dirt. But if something came into us that we couldn't accept for whatever reason, it would go back out on a railroad car and be shipped to a weirdie.
Casting aside the occasional audit, Tim, do you prepare a closure report as you would with a building project and submit that to DEEP for their approval at the conclusion of the project? Is there anything that says, here's our final report, here's all the sampling tests, et cetera, this is our procedure, this is how many yards we put in? Is there something where DEEP would make a proclamation at the end that said, okay, we accept this?
So if I'm interpreting your question correct, we've filled the site, we've built it out, and essentially the facility is up and running. So, you know, that's all part of the remedial action plan, having the asphalt in place, the buildings in place. And yes, there is a final closure that everything was done in accordance and, you know, everything was placed properly in accordance with the remedial action plan. Now with that, there's also financial assurities, commitments from the developer to the state of Connecticut for the land use restriction. There's going to be monitoring requirements. And that has nothing to do with bringing more mud material in. That's just to deal with the material even that's already on the site. There'll be monitoring requirements. There'll be visual inspection requirements. Again, not just for the mud material, but that's because of just what's there. So, you know, there's just like the town landfill. You know, yeah, the town landfill's there, it's closed, but are you done with it? No. I mean, you still have to maintain it, visually inspect it, monitor for groundwater. So it's always part of the process. But there is a closure
Yes.
to the bud. You know, once we get to that point of yardage, this elevation, that part gets closed out. But it's always in the loop, just like your landfill with the state of Connecticut. And that would be there if we brought bud material in or if we didn't bring bud material in.
You know, because if Bill and Mr. Anastasio do very well with the fill and it takes longer than we thought, and they decide to retire or sell a property, I'm just concerned with the interim stage. Suppose there is no final build out. So when I look at the cross section and it shows fill and it shows 6 inches of clean fill, quote unquote, cap, I'm looking at maybe that being forever. So I'm looking at it, I understand what you're saying, if you put asphalt down, if you put an 18-inch concrete slab down, that's what Amazon did. They put a slab down, they collapsed the building into the hole, and they encapsulated it. I get that. I assume that what you'll be asking this commission to act on is something that we would be able to consider done or finished at some point, and it wouldn't be dependent on going back later and adding a concrete cap or what have you. I assume that the cover fill would be adequate if there was no build out.
Well, yeah, not at 6 inches though, and with not a geotechnical fabric. I don't think DEP would allow it.
Okay.
You know, I don't know if we would.
The cover fill, it's in my draft again, the cover fill is strictly for stabilization while the building process is built out. The deep won't accept bringing in this bud material and then just putting cover fill on and walking away. They're looking for the financial surety and the commitment of the developer to bring it to completion.
Can you explain that? What kind of financial security?
It's in a formula actually within the deep requirements.
Because one of the things that I thought about was setting such a high bond. You know, and I mean, it's just, there's just so many variables and there's so many open questions.
Part of our requirement from DECD for our grant. And
Who's
part
DECD?
of DECD is Department of Economic Development. We work together with DEP to do all this. They work together on most of this. They act in concert in different ways to help us get to where we're trying to get. And our requirement, and it's a good question, Alan didn't ask the question, but he brought it up. The money we make from bringing in the fill is not going into our pockets. It's going to cost tens of millions of dollars to clean the property to the level we're trying to clean it to. We get a rough estimate of $300 to $400 million to make this pristine. But it's going to cost $35 to $40 million just to get it developable. So there's no money in the fill except to get us to the point where we can actually build on the property. It allows us to make the brownfield something that's usable. That's really what the intent is, and that's what the state sets it up as. And we have requirements of how much money we need to spend. I don't remember the exact numbers, but I think it's something in the range of $400 million that we're required to spend in order to keep the $4 million. So it's not like they're giving us $4 million. It's a gift for the moment to help us get to the point where it's immediate so we can build on it. But then we have to go further. We have to develop the parcel. And if we don't develop the parcel, it comes back to us for the money. So there's not a lot of money in it for us until we're done.
Is there any way that you can prove that paperwork-wise to the town?
I think
I don't necessarily need to see it, but if you can supply that to Alan, Alan can talk to town council and look at that, and then they can come back and say, yes.
I don't know if I provided that, but if I didn't, I will. It's just a couple of grant applications that came from the state, list our requirements.
And those requirements show on paper that you absolutely, positively, or someone has to build this thing.
Yes. Yeah.
Whether it's you or you go out and look for investors, whatever you do.
If we accept the money, we have to build this thing. That's the bottom line.
And Billy, again, I think that information may be very good to put out so that the residents of this town have a better feeling that this isn't just a, hey, let's bring in everybody else's toxic stuff, and then...
To give you a good sample of what you've seen, the plans you've seen today, we're somewhere about $45 million into this engineering. And that's just right now. We've got probably another $20 million in engineering by the time we get this thing built. And that's not even counting design, development.
If you do it, I don't doubt the cost.
It is, but we're deep into this. We're not walking away from it. So, and not only that, next month we'll be filing the air permit with the state. So you'll see the detailed design of the emissions and everything else that's going to be coming out of this facility, which it's going to be so low, it would be, you're going to be very surprised how low it's going to end up being. We actually, doing the numbers quickly with the VOCs and the NOx, from what I've seen so far, we were roughly the equivalent of 3 diesel trucks going back and forth to Pennsylvania with our trash. 3. And that's all we're making.
That's all well and good, but if you could get that financial information to Alan, so that Alan can get it to town council, take a look at it. I think it's going to appease some of the concerns, some, not all, some of the concerns. And I also think it's going to be in your benefit so that the people out there understand that you're not going to make a toxic dump and walk away. So,
By the way, David lives in North Haven right near us too, so.
We're nosing into 9 o'clock here.
I know.
First of all, maybe Bill could put on the record that the applicant is granting an extension to the commission to act on the application.
Yeah, the applicant is granting the extension of the commission to act on the
And maybe
application.
at this point, as Alan says, maybe at this point, I'm just going to ask my commissioners if they got any other questions, answer those. We'll turn it briefly over to the residents. We'll put a little time limit on each resident so we're not here tomorrow morning. And
I'm fine with it.
and then you got me again next week.
I can't wait.
So, guys, any other questions? John, you gonna hold up?
Yeah, I'll hold up.
Okay. Steve?
I'm gonna hold up if you want to receive some of the incoming information.
Sure. Yeah. Ms. Fox? Okay. All right. So now I'm going to open it up to the public. But before I do, I'm going to have our intervener come up, take the mic. No problem. Please introduce yourself. I will. And you got to get the microphone. It's right there.
It's right there. Let me, can I hand this down?
Yeah.
And then I will introduce you.
Yeah.
I want to give it. And then I will now. Is this the microphone? This is the microphone.
We'll mark this exhibit 2-1.
What was that again?
2-1.
Okay.
Good evening. My name is, I don't know who to speak to, whether I go this way or this way. I'll go this way.
As long as it's in the microphone, we don't care which one.
Okay, yes, all right. Is this an amplifier? Yeah. Okay. My name is Nancy Alderman. I reside at 1191 Ridge Road, North Haven. I'm here to testify this evening on 2 accounts. The first account is that I have petitioned the Wetland Commission to be an intervener in the Echo Park proposal. As such, I would like to testify that Gambardella's proposal to allow acres of toxic material to be distributed and disturbed and moved to New Haven should be denied on the grounds that its toxicity will negatively impact the North Haven wetlands and the Quinnipiac River. The second reason I'm here to testify against this proposal is because I am and have been for 25 years an advisor to the Quinnipiac River Fund at the Community Foundation of Greater New Haven. As an advisor, I have worked for 25 years to improve the health of the river by giving out grants to scientists, community activists, and public health professionals who have all worked to clean up the Quinnipiac River. The mission of the Quinnipiac River Fund is to protect the river from additional harms and to improve the river's health. Through these grants, we have learned about the condition of the river, how to improve and tighten the permits of the industries that are along the river, and the importance that the land adjacent to the river has on the river's health. Gambardella's Echo Park proposal will negatively affect the Quinnipiac River because the plans call for North Haven's toxic wetlands to be disturbed and dug up so they can be sent over to New Haven. The disturbed toxic land is close to the Quinnipiac River and will negatively impact its health. The New Haven site that Gambardella wants to send the toxic material to is close to the New Haven section of the Quinnipiac River. And so the river will be negatively impacted again by this toxic material. North Haven lived through the years when the Upjohn chemical plant polluted our air, our wetlands, and the Quinnipiac River. This proposal could do the same thing to us all over again. We cannot let this happen. We must protect the wetlands, and we must protect the Quinnipiac River. I wrote this, of course, before I came this evening, and now I've learned, I hope, a lot from the presentations. And the more I have listened, the worse for the wetlands this proposal is. And I question, this is now the second meeting. There was one, it was continued. Now this one is continued. And I'm going to even make the thought that the reason it keeps being continued is there is no way that this proposal can ever protect the wetlands and can ever protect the Quinnipiac River, no matter how many questions you ask them, no matter how many engineers they bring in. This toxic material, once you disturb it, once you move it around, once you send it over to New Haven, where it's next to the Quinnipiac River in New Haven, and your question, which was so good, the one you asked about, okay, you cap it, but the stuff is underneath it, and we're there forever with it, and that will leach into the wetlands, into the Quinnipiac River. So, and I know that this proposal and your job is the wetlands. I understand that. And I know that we're not meant to talk about what happens after he caps these toxic lands. But you can't separate it. If you put an incinerator on top of the wetlands, what is that going to do to the Quinnipiac River, which it's going to drop all its stuff into the Quinnipiac River? You can't separate it. The other thing, your job is just the wetlands, and I understand that. And so I really only want to address the wetlands. But I would just like to say, for information, having worked on shutting down the Upjohn chemical plant, which took 10 years to do, and I just want to say, our air regulations in Connecticut and federally are not very good. What is good are our water regulations. You have the regulations. We have water regulations. We have almost no air regulations. And so what happened with Upjohn, it was the air that was hurting everybody. We got them on the discharges to the water. So your job is incredibly important. You do have the law behind you. And what you do is going to affect the lives of your North Haven residents, and putting anything on Universal Drive, which is the economic engine, it allows us to not pay the taxes they pay in Hamden. Put something at Universal Drive is unbelievable what it will do to us. And I thought, you know, at my age, having done Upjohn, do I have to do this again? Do I have to go at this one more time? And it's going to be just as dangerous and just as bad. And good luck to you all. And you have a hard job, but you'll do it. And hopefully you will protect North Haven. And I thank you, because it's hard work. And it's late nights, and I thank you.
All right, thank you.
Wait a minute, I'm sorry. Oh, you want the paper?
Okay, so I'm going to open it up to the town residents. Now listen, I'm dealing with only wetland issues. I know there's a lot of issues, but tonight we're on wetland issues. If you go off wetland issues, I'm going to shut you down. We were very lenient last month. This month I'm going to be a little bit more. A couple of minutes each, and ask me the question. He's listening. And then after you're done, sit back down and answer your question. If there's something that comes back up and it needs another explanation, he'll re-explain. So, first person. Anybody? Sir, take the microphone, name, address, and only on issues. And speak loudly. Nope. The one Nancy was using. Yes. Yes, application, this wetland application.
So Mike Kaplan, resident, 6 Old Orchard Road. One thing I'd like to bring up from the very beginning, and I have some of the documents that you were seeking from the applicant. Talk louder.
Yeah, you gotta yell.
All right. So the inland wetland regulations for the town of North Haven require considering more than the scope within this application. If you go to section 7.4.1, the applicant must provide the complete description of the future use of the facility, and it goes through and describes in greater detail. The roadmap that was provided to us so far, as well as the rest of the application, is incomplete, internally inconsistent, and at best premature. We have a roadmap that has a power plant that is not connected to the transmission system, a power plant that is not connected to the grid, a digester that is selling gas but is not connected to the gas pipeline, although the narrative says there will be a 2-mile pipeline to the center of New Haven. That does not appear on any of the documents that we've received so far. Hopefully that doesn't go through any wetlands, but there's no way for anyone to know. There are, in terms of the cost, there's a budget in here, but the more you look at it, the more questions rather than answers that you'll have. So I guess in terms of documents, everything that I'm providing is something that the applicant has, so that's why I only have one set here right now. There's the financial assistance proposal to Cedar Hills Infrastructure Improvement District. That is for AB Eco Park. This is from the state of Connecticut. It's for a brownfield grant. In addition to the need to repay the money that was mentioned by the applicant, there is also going to be a mortgage on the property so that if this does not become a waste treatment facility, then that lien and mortgage can be foreclosed upon by the state. There's a use restriction that it can only be a waste transfer facility for the 10 years after the date with decent clarification on. This is meant to be one holistic project, and we have not received any kind of permitting matrix with sequencing that shows that there is any possibility of action happening without approvals for the entire project. I have many more things that I would say, comments on each of the documents that I would provide here, so I'll try and do this part quick. Would you like to hand these to anyone? Would you like to give these to anyone in particular?
Alan.
Alan, okay, I'll do it at the end. So there's the proposal from the state, which is being now turned into an agreement between the parties that's still under negotiation, according to what I've heard from the state. There is the grant application itself, which has the budget, the sources, and the uses, and then the budget is subsequently updated. The numbers are somewhat incoherent in terms of the changes in the patterns and what are actual costs or not costs. Numbers. There's the conceptual remedial action plan that's referenced in the wetland assessment but not provided in the application to the town.
Well, in fairness, I believe that's being taken out.
Let's take that more as an indication of this application being premature to be brought to the town. So, for instance, materials state, the wetland assessment report states that there will not be impacts on threatened, endangered species of special concern. However, the consultation was just initiated. They haven't received a preliminary assessment yet that says this is the appropriate, these are the studies that we want you to do, and this is the appropriate time of year for doing it. And absent that, it seems unrealistic to think that there's any way that continuing these proceedings is going to be productive until there is a known schedule. When will those studies be performed? On the vernal pool question, the wetland assessment was done in January. Even if the expert identified what was a vernal pool, they wouldn't be able to say whether it was productive or not, because it's the wrong season. So it's kind of creating the impossible outcome. And as part of the circular nature within this application. The discussion of alternatives, well, it's not consistent with, again, this piecemeal approach. Because if we're just looking at remedial action, then why does there need to be a large development on top? Perhaps it's to get to the economics to pay for it, for the remedial action. The numbers in here don't tell that story clearly to say whether that's the case or not. And so are the criteria in the alternatives actually relevant? If we want to take a piecemeal approach, then take a piecemeal approach. But I don't know that from these materials that there's anything that shows that that's possible. The concept paper was interesting. The timetable for AB Eco Park. I think it would be very helpful once there is a permitting matrix with sequencing and dependencies, including showing when things can actually stop to see whether some of the scenarios that were described this evening are even possible. If this timetable could be updated, because it would certainly have implications for many steps in this process. But I think there's a level of optimism within it that raises questions about other materials in the application. You know, as of April 2023, the expectation was that by June of 2024, that the first sorting facility would be up and operating. No permitting had commenced as of that time, and yet the facility would be up and operating by the middle of this year. A power plant in this plan up and operating by the middle of 2026. There is no interconnection application that's been done to date, although the need to connect to the grid is described in this report. I've reviewed the interconnection queue for ISO New England. Would be happy to find out that, or maybe not happy to find out that I'm wrong, but would certainly be interested to hear that. But the interconnection queue just shows nothing on the relevant circuits around here or of the fuel mix as well. I guess another thing that was interesting was when we looked in the environmental monitor and saw that before the public hearing in December, there was notice published about this project, and that there was a deadline for all of us to respond, and if we wanted to require a scoping meeting. I was not able to be at the December meeting. I didn't hear about that hearing, or I didn't know that there was an incinerator plant until just before when I was away. But so this notice, from what I've heard, was not mentioned at the hearing. So it makes me question some of the discussion of like collaboration and transparency that I've heard about this process and some of the materials. Now, after that notice and public comments were due January 4th. The minutes from the December 13th meeting say that there will have to be an environmental impact evaluation because of the scope of the impacts from this project. So we know that that's going to happen. Still awaiting confirmation of, well, then what is the public involvement? What is the project? If you look at the notice that is in the environmental monitor, it is very different than the notice that we have for this project, or that the applicant provided in response to their Inland Wetlands Commission application. It talks about the 600,000 cubic yards and about how this is to develop the waste treatment facility. So there's more, but I'll limit it there because I know that there'll be others who want to speak. There are A theme of inconsistencies within the materials that we already have. The survey that was provided in the inland wetlands application says that the wetlands were delineated by a different firm than the one on the report. The report itself doesn't actually say who did the work, or when we get to the question of the habitat, was there a herpetologist? Was there a botanist? Did the people with the appropriate expertise participate for the relevant portions of the report? I'm going to stop there because I know there are many others, but happy to come back up later.
Okay, what are you giving to Alan?
So I'm giving to Alan.
And Alan, do you want to do it individually or do you want to do it as a package?
Let's see what comes up. I think we should mark them collectively, Exhibit 2-2, and we'll somewhat informally label it Mike Kaplan Exhibit.
Yeah. 2- what, sir?
I have a request if, I think this would be easier for the town, perhaps the applicant as well as others, is if files could be provided, in addition, however, the commission would like to have them, if they could also be provided electronically to the town. There are materials that are very difficult to review meaningfully within the town's offices when we get the plans. Pictures on my phone because we can't have copies made. It's just not practical. It doesn't support the public actually being able to review it, or the public being able to engage with experts in other parties. So given this, I think as a practice for all projects, that would be a helpful thing, but given the scale of this project, I think that would be very important.
Okay, thank you very much. Billy, do you want to make any comment on that? It wasn't really a serious question.
Real briefly.
Okay.
A lot of things have changed over the course of time, and I know it's not going to be as quick as we had hoped it would be. Even this process is taking much longer than we hoped, obviously, and not just you, it's a lot of other things.
Yeah.
So everything is taking longer, and I'm finding out and talking to different vendors about machinery and everything else. You're talking a year waiting time for this, 2 years waiting time for this. This is not going to be in the time frame we expected it to be. And that's the honest answer. As far as the environmental impact estimate, evaluation, and the scoping, you are correct. That's going to be done. It's actually going to be done directly by Department of Economic Development. They're going to contract it, pay for it, and they're going to undertake it, and you'll have the opportunity to comment on that. So that is coming. They're undertaking that for us because they feel it should be done by them independently, which I have no problem with. So just wanted to make that clear.
Thank you. Mr. Penn?
Good evening, Ron Penton, 132 Bull Road, North Haven, been a resident for 35 years. Question for you, Frank. I mean, I sat on this board for 10 years, so I know what you guys are doing. I came prepared with a whole list of questions and comments, but I now know that the plans have changed.
Hold off.
So I don't really want to waste my time or your time.
Thank you.
Because next month I could come back and do the same thing again. I don't know how other people feel, but it could go on and on and on. I think we should only be commenting on the final plan and not an interim plan.
I think that you're correct, but at the same time, this is a democracy, and this is a setup to let the people speak and let us understand what they think, what questions they have, Ron. But I really applaud and I appreciate
I will
deal with what we're dealing with today. I know you've got a lot of questions, and some of them are probably going to be asked again, because it seems as though we haven't looked at this application or this set of maps. It was an application change. So,
Well, you can listen to whoever you want to, but I will personally defer your time until next month.
thank you. Thank you, Ron. Next. Mary White? Okay, Mary State. Oh, okay. Ma'am?
Quick. Anna Claire Ives, 371 Mansfield Road, 369 Mansfield Road, 367 Mansfield Road, and 2605 Ridge Road. These are all properties in North Haven, Connecticut. I am in agreement with the fellow that just spoke. Mike, yeah, I don't know you, but I'm in agreement with what you just said. I kind of confused myself because there's sort of like, is it over here, is the left ball over here, and the right ball's over here, and I don't really know where all the balls are. So I think it's difficult for me to comment and ask the questions that I really had for tonight, because I don't really know what the plan is. And maybe if one can kind of, you know, I know it's hard for you, you're probably dealing with a lot of different things, and I understand that. But it's really difficult for me to comment tonight, so I won't waste your time as long as I know the public hearing will be extended for the next meeting, which I'm pretty sure it will be, then I'll defer my questions as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Mary Lee? Now, Mary, you realize the application's changed, and the whole dynamics of this is all going to be different. So,
Where Mary is.
Go this way? So turn that one?
That's
No?
the mic.
Oh, this is one. Mary White, Summer Lane. I'm not gonna say as much as I was gonna say, because like you said.
Yeah, it's gonna change.
But I have some maps that I wanna get to the commission, so
Okay.
I'm kinda gonna focus on the maps. But I wanna say that a very significant statement was made. It's a $4 million. Oh, I'm sorry, Mary White, Summer Lane. The $4 million grant depends on them building the facility. That's a very important statement. They are asking this commission to trust which fill they use when their motivation is the facility. They are doing this for profit, make no mistake about that. Relative to the testing report from 2017, I found it confusing and incomplete. I could not find where the test pits were done. I noticed that they hit groundwater at many different levels, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 9 feet.
Mary,
Numerous times.
Mary, that 2016 and 2017 report, you didn't get the appendages, okay? So the appendages will give you all the test pit results and all the groundwater results. But Mary, after 8 years, those are not legal, they're not binding. All I asked for, and that was me, okay, so that's my fault. I asked for it because it's a background. Don't go by that study on any questioning or any commenting, because it could be changed. Things change over time, and that study is only good for 8 years, and we're in the 8th year. So,
Okay.
just-
So, because I noticed too, in the file, there was photographs taken, but I don't know when those photographs were taken, so I don't know if it's 8 years ago or recently, more recent than that, but I did notice it said strong petroleum odor was present, and strong creosote odor was present. Let's see, so the next thing I want to talk about, I'm going to get to the maps. So all the areas, as there 16 or 17 areas of wetlands, will be negatively impacted, including the large open water features and marshes. So the first handout I have is a map from depdata.ct.gov. It's Natural Diversity Database Areas, dated 12/18/23, North Haven. And the reason why I'm giving out this map is because there's blue symbols on it. which are marshes, and it's on this property. So it's number one.
Mary, tidal marshes are governed by a different body than us.
Okay.
And any tidal, Billy, who does that? It's DEEP, but what group?
Oh, Army Corps.
Army Corps.
Okay.
Yes. So we know that there's tidal wetlands on there, and we're here to protect wetlands, yes. But under our purview, unfortunately, the tidal wetlands, they come under a different group.
Okay, yeah, and
Yep.
so the reason why I wanted to get that in is because I had heard a statement made, and I was sitting in the back of the room, so maybe I misheard it, but I had heard them say something about that there wasn't any marshes on the property, so that's the only reason for this, but maybe I misheard.
Yeah, I believe in the southeast corner? Yeah, isn't it in the southeast corner? That there's tidal marsh? No? Okay.
Not on the property.
Okay.
Well,
Okay.
so the second handout I have is a map for you that I got from inside the file from NSAFE Figure 4. So this shows the large bodies, water bodies on the site.
Yep.
And the closeness of the Quinnipiac River. So take number 2.
Let's mark these collectively also, everything that Mary White submit and Tom submit will be marked exhibits 2-3.
Okay. So they are destroying 2,134 square feet of wetlands. Why are they doing that? So they can build their facility. They are destroying acres of upland review areas. They are destroying buffer zones. They will destroy the animals on the property, such as the bears, deer, and wildcats and many habitats. They will destroy vegetation on the site. They are impacting the wetlands by adding drainage, pipes, swaleways, and splash pads. So getting to the excessive 600,000 cubic yards of toxic contaminated fill, why so much? Again, so that they can fill and destroy those wetlands so they can build their facility. That's their motivation. This commission does not know exactly what is going to be in the dredged fill coming from the New Haven Harbor. I'm sure the New Haven Harbor will be thrilled to get rid of their toxic dredged material and get it out and get it into New Haven, into North Haven. There will be long-term negative impacts of that contaminated fill on the wetlands and the vegetation, water features, and the little river. Okay, so I wanted to get into briefly about what happened on December 30th, 2022 that has an impact here. So prior to this date, the Trump rule allowed businesses and developers to dump pollutants into unprotected waterways and fill in wetlands, threatening public water supplies downstream and harming wildlife and habitat. The Trump-era EPA had ignored its own findings that small waterways can affect the well-being of the larger waterways they flow into. So what happened on December 30th, 2022? The EPA finalized a water protection rule that repeals the Trump-era changes. They finalized regulations that protect hundreds of thousands of small streams, rivers, wetlands, and other waterways. The rule defines which waters of the United States are protected by the Clean Water Act. EPA and Department of Army reworked the rule based on definitions that were in place prior to 2015. They wrote a durable definition of waterways to reduce uncertainty. The Biden rule applies federal protections to wetlands, tributaries, and other waters that have a significant connection to navigable waters. A river is an obviously regulated body of water. A Quinnipiac River tributary of 3.6 miles is called Little River. This body of water is regulated and protected under EPA water rules. Okay, this project of bringing in this 600,000 cubic yards of contaminated fill will, and the end project, will pollute the Little River and the Quinnipiac River. So I have 2 more maps for you. So the first map I have is showing the Little River and how it flows to 250 Universal Drive, and then it continues to 260 Universal Drive, then down to where it meets the Quinnipiac River. So this map, so this map you're going to receive is from Bowler. It was from another project of the billboards. It's a topographical map. So you're going to see gold circles, and those gold circles, that is showing you the label of where it says Little River. And you're going to notice, like the contour, this curvature here, that's McDermott Road. And in the green, that's 250 Universal Drive. So all you do is you follow those circles, and you will see how the Little River goes under the highway, and then it comes out. They have identified themselves in another project as abutting the highway. Okay. So I have another map for you. This is going to be a little clearer for you. So this map is from mapcarta.com. This shows a zoomed image of the path of the Little River. So you can clearly see McDermott Road. You can match the curvature of McDermott Road to the previous Bowler map. And then you can see that the Little River, it's in blue on this map, you can see how it goes under the highway and then it comes out to 250 Universal Drive, and it travels down and goes on to the 260 Universal Drive and keeps going south until eventually it will meet up with the Quinnipiac River.
Mary, you're saying that on this map here, number 11 is 250 Universal Drive?
Yes, if you look
All right,
at...
Mary, I don't want to do you harm, but I do not believe that this is the applicant's property. Could you do me a favor, Mary? Could you give the applicant this map, and could the applicant just see if that's his piece of property? I just want to make sure that everybody is on the same page here. I believe that the applicant's property is further to the east by far.
By far.
By far. So, Billy, could you...
Things further to the west.
I'm sorry, yes, I'm sorry, further to the west.
Okay.
Billy, could you just, really quick, just give, on her map, could you just point to your piece of property? Yeah, it's the other side of railroad tracks.
Okay. This is the highway. This is, looks like Sims.
No, Billy, it's the other side of railroad tracks. Yeah, this is...
Yep, you're right.
This is Andy.
Yep.
And this is the piece of property. There you go.
Okay.
So this is not 250 Universal Drive?
No, so, because when you said the Little River, I mean, I looked at all the tributary maps as well, and I made sure that the Little River wasn't on this site.
That's 234.
Wow.
Okay.
Well, isn't that interesting?
It is.
Because now we know that with another application, this
We're gonna see you
information
again.
was presented as fact and truth, and it's not.
But
So
that's
one
okay, because that's what everybody is here for, Mary.
Yeah.
Because now,
Absolutely.
the next meeting, you're gonna know where it is, you're gonna be able to look at it, check it out. Because Mary, you know, you're passionate. Keep it up.
Yes, yes.
Okay?
Okay.
And we got you on the general, so we'll see you next month.
Okay, all right, but can I just finish
Yes.
real quick?
Yeah, real quick.
I got a couple more things. I had wanted to...
Mary, do you still want to enter this?
Not this one, because it's not accurate.
How about we
Okay,
do
we've
it?
got them collectively, we'll put it in.
We'll put not
It has no
accurate.
relevance,
Not
that's
accurate,
okay.
all right?
All right.
Okay.
Okay, all right. So I wanted to ask about So there's an imminent threat to the wetlands because of all this flammable hazardous waste on there, and that they will be covering most of it. And we know that tires are flammable, and that a fire would spread rapidly. So we know that the tire pond has monitors in there, so I couldn't really understand what they were saying relative to the monitors that they are going to be putting in place in the site to monitor the temperature of these covered hazardous objects, material, that if it were to ever catch fire, we know it doesn't go out for years. The water, the foam does not serve a purpose. It doesn't take it out. So I wanted to know about the monitors that will be put in the site and where, and I want to know what type of monitoring system they will be used, that will be used, who will be responsible for monitoring those monitors, and who will pay the millions and millions to make that monitoring system
Well, that's what I can
happen.
tell you, it's the applicant.
No.
No, it's the landowner, okay, and that part I can tell you. It would not be the town of North Haven.
Okay.
I mean,
Not the town of
Upjohn
North Haven.
does their own, and they pay for it.
Okay, all right, so basically, I just want to say what they are doing here is they're cleaning up some of the site, they're covering the hazardous waste with some type of contaminated fill, clay or sand. They're destroying over 2,000 square feet of wetlands, destroying upland wetland review areas, possibly acres, destroying buffers. Then they will recontaminate the wetlands, the site, and the Quinnipiac River with their Eco Park facility when the incinerators release many air pollutants, including nitrogen oxides, sulfur dioxides, particulate matter, lead, mercury, dioxins, and furans. And from what I understand when reading the public hearing notice, they're looking to start this monstrosity of the end product of this facility. It starts with you guys, and they want you to approve this permit to conduct the regulated activity of bringing in toxic material that is going to, is going to destroy over 2,000 square feet of wetlands. I just can't imagine that you're like, yeah, this is a great idea. I don't see the upside to it.
Okay.
Yeah, and then in the end, like, you have to consider that it does say that they want that special permit from you, but it also says that they want a site plan referral. Now, being in this town for 33 years, from what I understand, a site plan referral is, this is the site, this is what we want to do, and in this case, it's all tied together with the end product, so they're going to have to show you this site plan, and they're asking you for a positive or a negative referral on the site plan. And if you give a positive referral to that monstrosity of a facility, which if I had more time, I would talk about study relative to it, then you are telling planning and zoning, yep, we're okay with them destroying over 2,000 square feet of wetland. We're okay with them bringing in this toxic fill and being dredged from the New Haven Harbor. We're okay, this is great. And you know what? We like their plan. We like their site plan. We think it's great that they're gonna have all of the incinerators are gonna be reducing all these air pollutants and contaminating the site again and negatively impacting the health of the residents. So you need to be very careful of what you do. And yes, I understand it's all about the wetlands and the water courses, but it is, in this case, it is tied to the public safety and the public's health.
Thank you very much, Mary. Would you like to make some comment on the monitoring wells? Because that was the actual question, was who and the use. Yeah, super. And I know you're going to have ground monitoring wells. Yeah.
They're, as part of, like I said before, to my deputy, as I said before, the contamination that's there in place will require long-term monitoring and maintenance.
And she wants to know who does it and who pays for it. So you do it?
The owner of the property does it, and a licensed environmental professional does it under the direction, essentially oversight of DEP. And as far as the tires and the monitoring and that type of problem, there will be a program in place where as things are found during development, there's going to be segregation. It doesn't mean we're going to go there and just bury tires and leave them there. Can we consolidate something and work with the state to do that? Possibly. If not, we have to move things and properly take care of them off-site.
Okay, thank you.
No, I just want to ask, Alan, can you clarify, this referral is not a site plan referral, right? It's a spill permit referral, or, I mean, would you call it by the same name? I just want to make sure we're on the
It
same
could be
page.
called by either name.
Okay.
In terms of your commission's jurisdiction, it is a referral. So we would send either a site plan or a fill permit site plan to you for that referral.
Okay, and then the zoning commission is approving the fill only.
permit.
I just want to clarify, they're
Yeah.
not approving the entire project, correct? They're just,
We don't know
or
that.
what are they approving? Let us know.
That's an interesting question, but that's correct. It's a fill permit. What's before you is a fill permit, and what'll be before them is a fill permit. If they were to hypothetically include the construction of a trash burning facility or handling facility, it would have to come right back to you folks. You're just evaluating the fill permit.
Okay, thanks.
All set. Ma'am?
Yes.
Oh, Billy, go ahead.
If I could, hold on a second. Somebody brought up New Haven before, I think it's important the commission understands that. New Haven's evaluating that for themselves, whether or not we can bring the fill from the northern end to their site. They're waiting for you to make a decision, and we continued that meeting again with them. We'll do that again with them, because they want you to make your decision before they make their decision. If they say no, the fill just gets removed from the northern end and gets spread out on our side. Quite honestly, as part of that 600,000 yards. But we're hoping New Haven will allow us to bring it down to their end because they're basically fairly clean fill. Right? So they don't want to say yes until you say yes, essentially.
Ma'am? And keep it short.
Oh, it's just it's only a statement.
No problem.
Only a statement.
Name and address and so report.
Leon DeFermo, 62 Juniper Drive.
Sorry, can you spell your last name, please?
And it's only...
Spell your last name, please, for...
Oh, yes, F-E-R-M-O. And it's only a statement.
And I'm sorry,
I
your
thank you
address?
for your patience. You're great. The only thing that puzzles me is that, listening, how do you separate the wetland from the project when what's stated tonight is that if the project doesn't happen, we have to give the grant money back? And that's my statement.
Thank you. Anyone else? Sir?
My name's Carl Stopper. I reside at 35 Side Hill Road in North Haven. Just a few brief comments because I know things are going to be changing with the next revisions that are due. But I believe I heard one of the presenters mention that they characterize the site as being a landfill. And I just want to clarify, is this site technically a landfill under the Connecticut solid waste regulations? Was it an unpermitted landfill? And are the applicants working with the solid waste management unit in trying to resolve how this landfill should be capped and closed? Because normally, if you're dealing with a landfill, there's certain regulations that apply. I mean, you see it with the landfill that the town has. And it may change how they would approach, you know, the requirements for closure of the site versus, you know, a different unit within the DEP. One thing I haven't heard mentioned at all tonight in the presentation has to do with surface water. So you have these wetland units that are next to the areas where they're proposing to place fill material. Obviously, there's going to be surface runoff that comes from the fill materials, and they have controls in place to regulate those discharges into the wetlands. But what concerns me is that and I believe, Frank, you may have brought this up earlier, concern over the leaching of materials from the fill. And what concerns me relative to the wetlands is the impact that these materials would have on the surface water that's entering these wetland units from the groundwater that feeds the wetlands. And I didn't hear any discussion from the applicant about that particular aspect of whether that's being addressed as part of their proposed remedial action plan and how they're demonstrating compliance with that aspect.
They do have a stormwater report, and I was inching on it, and I actually backed off from 100 million questions that I have due to the fact that we're getting a new set of prints. So as far as the surface water, until we see these prints, it could be the same or it could be different. And that's why I backed off on it.
Yeah, my concern actually goes a little bit beyond that, because
we'll go into it.
Because when you have groundwater underneath a site like this where you have polluted materials that have impacted the groundwater, that groundwater ultimately discharges somewhere to the surface water. And I don't know, whether it discharges to these wetlands or to the Quinnipiac River, but ultimately that groundwater winds up somewhere in the surface waters.
And they've done testing that we don't have the answers to yet. I asked again tonight, they're going to get us the test pits, and in those test pits, they'll give us the water levels. A lot of that will come out of that. And a lot of my questions on that will be once we get those results. I backed off from that because it just almost wasn't appropriate tonight.
One of my questions actually feeds into this last speaker here with regard to decoupling the development from the proposed plan for filling activities. There's no guarantee that this proposed development will reach an endpoint of success.
And we're scared to death on that.
You're looking at a lot of permits and agencies and things that ultimately would reach that endpoint. What concerns me is that the proposed plan is all predicated, the filling plan is predicated on this proposed development being implemented and being successfully implemented. And my concern is that if the plan does not proceed forward, that maybe there's a different approach to addressing the cleanup of this piece of property that would reduce the impact on the actual wetland areas, because you wouldn't need to place as much fill material. So they're saying that the amount of fill material is tied to what this proposed development is. Plus, the proposed development will change the runoff characteristics of the site and have a different impact on the wetlands and water courses. And it seems that the two should be combined as one proposal. But that's just my opinion. One last comment. It has to do with the wetlands themselves. I'm not quite certain whether I fully understand what impact the current material that these wetlands are sitting in, the fill materials that were previously placed there. It sounds like these wetlands are man-made features that are a result of, filling and other activities. They may not even be in natural soil. So that the materials that the wetlands are in, are those being addressed as part of the remedial action plan? So in other words, normally if you're cleaning up a site, not only do you clean up the contaminated soil, the groundwater if you have to deal with that, but anything that may have impacted sediment or surface water bodies, you're also required to address those impacts. And I'm not sure I heard from the applicants, what cleanup activities are actually going to be done in the wetlands so that if there are sediments or other materials that were deposited there that don't meet, sediment criteria for wetlands. So was there an impact assessment where they actually looked at the ecological receptors from the impacts of what's in these sediments, so that if there has to be cleanup done in the wetlands, I would think that should be addressed as part of this application.
Thank you very
That's
much.
all I have. Thank you.
Billy, you want to address the dump, the surface water, and the wetland cleanup?
First, I want to point out to the commission that this property cannot be developed by anyone until someone complies with the state order that was issued in 1988 to remove the contamination in Area 17.
That's the EPA problem from Chuck Eddy's.
Exactly. Chuck Eddy's site has been in order since 1988. The property is currently owned by 3 estates. If we don't do this, and the town ends up owning the property, the town will have to clean it up. So there's a problem here. I say that in all due respect to everyone, because the last owner just died a month ago. So right now, I'm dealing with 3 estates with this property, and the property is a mess. And in terms of the wetlands, yes, there's a lot more assessment that needs to be done. What we're asking for tonight is permission to fill in that 2,100 square feet with the mitigation efforts of cleaning out 5, 6, and 7, and trying to make them clean with clean vegetation, etc. Will there need to be additional work done? We don't know.
Okay, so on the dump, was it a landfill or was it a railroad dump?
It's a railroad dump.
Okay.
We've been talking to Solid Waste Division and DEP for the last 2 years. We originally started out thinking it was maybe 30% landfill. I think we're now up to something like 60% landfill. As you saw from the original maps, they filled in a lot of area there.
Mm-hmm.
It's all garbage. The humps that they built are all garbage. We are limited in what we can do with a landfill because they will not allow us to dig out a landfill. You can't do that without state permission. So there's a lot of limitations with this property, and that's why we need to fill in between the humps and bring the land up so that we can just cover it all. And that's how we're going to mitigate it. As far as the wetlands are concerned, by the time we're done, right now the wetlands are full of railroad ties for the most part. There's barrels in there, there's tires in there. We're going to pull all that out. We're going to clean up the vegetation. We're going to clean all the wetlands, mitigate the wetlands. We'll probably do more mitigation on the far southern end because of the PCB we have to move down there. So that's all to come with the next application, which will also be, I hope, the last application, because that will include the entire site plan. As you saw, the site plan is done. The machinery, the details, the engineering is ongoing. The air permit is next month. The solid waste permit is probably towards June. And we'll be moving forward. Once we have those 2 big permits, are the 2 big permits we need to go forward.
You're going to get us that train of permits. You'll get.
I can do that.
Okay, any other questions? Ma'am? Microphone's right there.
Is there?
No. Follow the court.
Yeah.
Somebody help her out.
Right
there, your hand.
Okay.
Thank you. It's Helen West, over there, Helen West, This is, I'll be very quick. In our papers, for North Haven, they were given a big description of what was going on here. And they said that the plant in Hartford has closed up.
Helen, wetlands. You're talking about the
I know.
plan that's the
Right,
incinerator.
I just-
And tonight we're dealing with the wetlands.
I just am
Go
saying
ahead, take a
because
couple minutes.
maybe somebody in here, or maybe anybody who gathers information, may want to find out why the plant closed up. They did say it was because there were so many people complaining about it. And maybe, you know, I think it might be a good idea to look into it maybe and see why they closed up. And, because that's in a big part of the state.
That's near the Connecticut River.
Hold on. Member of the public, got it.
I apologize.
Okay, and I'm just more concerned about getting a lot more testing, I agree with Mary, on that soil coming from New Haven. You know, I think a lot of testing from different places would have to be done in order to allow it to come here to North Haven. You'd really have to know what's going on in that soil over there. I think that's important. That's it.
Okay, thank you. Guys, keep it to a wetland issue,
Yep.
because that's a fill issue, and we understand it, and I know everybody's frustrated and passionate, so, okay?
James Gregg, Old Orchard, North Haven. 17.
James, good.
Sorry,
What's the address?
James Gregg, 17 Old Orchard, North Haven.
Thank you.
How you doing? Thank you, everyone in the committee. That's a tough thing. So last meeting, you asked for like offline meeting or details or more review. Did any of that happen? You had asked for kind of like a big picture, so you and the committee could kind of make a proper assessment and have more info for real decision on this much bigger item. For this meeting, it seems like it is more kind of piecemeal, kind of a little bit bigger scope, change of scope, maybe a little different. Is this a normal kind of process? You also, I also heard mention that permits a moment ago, like permit to notice permits, you get those. Can you get those in writing? I only mention that because I don't have as much information as a lot of the other people here, but I understand that the owners testified in front of the legislature in like March 21 that there was a permit for the digester. For example, something like that and the information available in that permit would be very meaningful for additional information necessary for assessment of the environmental impact and assisting your decision. So that's, thank you.
Thank you. And to answer your question, we've got a lot more information. Unfortunately, there's a change, so it's all new information.
Yeah.
So I can't tell you if we have enough.
Appreciate
No
it.
idea.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Bill. Anyone else? Liam, come on up, take the microphone. Name, address.
Hi, good evening. Thank you for all the hard work that you're doing. Courtney Couples, it's Cupples, and I'm at 10 Old Farm Road and 115 Ridgewood Avenue. My question is more procedural, so pardon my ignorance and naivete. I know there are a lot of additional questions that came up tonight and after the December meeting. There's so much more to still be addressed from the applicant. It seems like this will continue to generate more and more questions. What is procedurally the threshold, I guess, for bringing this to a decision or a vote? I'm just curious kind of what that process looks like.
Guy to answer that question is Alan Frederickson. He's the administrator.
Today was the 65th day in terms of the date of receipt, the legal date of receipt. If the applicant did not consent to granting the commission an extension, it would have needed to be concluded tonight, and or risk that it would be automatically approved, something we would have contested, but it's possible that a clever lawyer like Mr. Gambardella could make a case for that. It can go 65 more days max in accordance with state statute from today, which would get it, we can get to the 27 March meeting of the regularly scheduled meetings of the Wetlands Commission. So we can have 2 more potential meetings according to the regular schedule.
And what happens after that
This
second?
commission will act.
I see. Okay, perfect. That answered my question. Thank you so much.
Anyone else?
Good question.
So my name is Marion Petrelli, 9 Old Orchard Road.
I'm sorry.
And my quick question is, how many people on this commission have actually walked in the wetlands area? Okay. And how many people in the remaining audience have walked in the wetlands area? So I make an observation which ties in with what Mary has said, Mike has said, Nancy Alderman has said, which is, when you walk these areas, especially different times of the season, you get a totally different perspective. And you realize how precious some of these areas are, even though they're kind of hidden gems behind these big mega stores. And there is an access, and I did go on a walk once before COVID, and my appreciation of that area was just enhanced tremendously. I had no concept for that area before I walked it with a group that was trying to say, we have some treasures we have to safeguard. That's without talking about health impacts if things leach as they can, as we know as landowners. So I just raised that question in terms of people being familiar with properties and understanding as town owners and parents and grandparents and wanting people environmentally, knowing all areas connect with other areas in terms of the way water moves and birds fly. And if you have a sense for the total environment, you need to sort of sometimes walk these areas and appreciate that it's really, man will make certain plants, but nature has a way of moving around with leaching of water systems, etc. So that's my comment.
Can I spell your last name, please?
Marion, M-A-R-I-O-N, Petrelli, P-E-T-R-E-L-L-I,
I just want to say that at the last meeting, we were advised actually not to go on this not to go in those wetlands.
Okay.
You might want to comment for safety reasons, honestly. So I wouldn't want people in the meeting here to suddenly ever go there. Maybe you can explain.
I think you can perhaps just walk in the area with somebody who knows the area well enough. I just don't know. But thank you for that.
If I can make a distinction, as a part of making an application to the Inland Wetlands Commission, the applicant has granted permission to the commission and town staff to walk the property, not the public per se. There are a lot of reasons for that, but I would caution about just going onto this particular
It's
site.
not the property, but even the wetlands near the property. They're not areas that are safe.
I grew up in North Haven, and I grew up a trespasser, okay? I continue to trespass in my profession and my career here, and I'll apologize for that, but I would not advise doing that. I would, if you can walk around there, walk the trail, they seem to have some type of permission to have the tidal basin trail there, and whatever you can do, God love you. But they have not granted permission for everyone to just go there because of the potential danger.
In a spirited little walking tour, it's helpful to know, those areas, as you say, the trails, because I did not grow up with North Haven either. So I have learned through routes, walking certain areas to enhance appreciation. That's the only way you discover.
I think it is, but just remembering it's private property and it's an industrial.
Anybody else for public comment? Mary, make it quick, Mary.
It's late.
I know, it's gonna be quick. Still Mary White, still on Summer Lane. I forgot to give a map, and I'm positive this is a correct map.
No problem.
I'm positive it's the property, and I'm positive it's the Quinnipiac River. So I wanted to submit this map because I want to show you the closeness, okay, of the Quinnipiac River to this site.
Okay. And anyone else? Okay, sir.
Chris Ozick, 603 Quinnipiac Avenue, New Haven. And no, I don't want my dredgings from New Haven to come to you guys. I actually tried to not have that happen. Two, what I'll say are recommendations to the commission, spurred on by one of Frank's comments about water testing. I was surprised that they didn't test the water. And I think a monitoring and evaluation plan of the water quality and what's in the water now and as they do the work so that you can see if contaminants are actually getting into that water body. So trust but verify, but monitoring evaluation plan throughout the project would be great. And then people can know that this is protected water body. Second thing is to condition. I believe you all have the ability to condition when you make your approvals or recommendations or whatever. You can condition what is actually going into this landfill. So if you look up the beneficial materials that are allowed to go in here, I'm sure most of the residents of North Haven can appreciate that. Those are my comments. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Okay, that's it? Anybody else?
Just one, sorry.
One more?
On the real quick. Sorry, I wasn't going to say anything, but I forgot I had this. One clear eyes. We said one eye to which one? One. I forgot that I had this. This was a message sent in, I think it was the taxes last year by the town of North Haven. And it said, a message from North Haven's Department of Public Works. I don't know if it was in there, but it was sent to a resident. And it said, think green, think clean. Water starts with you, North Haven. The future health of North Haven's and Connecticut's water depends on the actions of every household. No matter where we work, live, or play, we're connected to a river, a stream, a lake, a pond, inland wetland, or shoreline. In the case of North Haven, these include Waterman's Brook, the Muddy River, Quinnipiac River, Kings Pond, Todd's Pond, Farm River, Little River, 5 Mile Brook, Allen Brook, and Pine Brook. You know, for the town to send something like this out, it seems like this application kind of goes against what the town's plan of development might be. Just something to think about. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Okay, at this time, we're going to close the public comment part, and we got to get back to the regular agenda, which I got to find.
So we'll continue the public hearing
Yes,
at
we're
the
going to
next
continue the
meeting,
public hearing until next month.
which will be hopefully right here in the gym on February 28th, Wednesday evening at 7 o'clock.
Okay? And there's no enforcement, no extensions, no permitted use, no bond release. We have one correspondent, which we'll get to next month, because the change in the maps, we'll take care of that next month. And we have minutes of December 20, 2023. Can I get a motion on the minutes?
Make a motion to accept them.
Okay, John's got a motion for exception. Can I get a second? Okay, I've got a second from Cheryl. All those in favor say aye. Aye. I need a motion to adjourn. So moved. We have it by Steve Miller, seconded.
I'll second.
Joe Kennedy, seconded. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Carries. People, thank you very much. It's been a
The preceding program is brought to you in part through a grant from the town of North Haven. Watch town meetings or other videos on demand at nhtv.com.